Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Can you see my screen, sir?
I can see it. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I guess to get it started, we just wanted to talk first, like give a quick overview of like our context from our previous term, like the city. So it was titled the multi-generational city, in that we wanted to establish that cities nowadays were kind of built for economies rather than people. They were built on like efficiency and like making sure that or they're profitable, but then they kind of lost sight of at least the experiential side of it and like the people that were using them. So we wanted to build a city that focused on the Filipino culture of like familial ties and relations between people like and the community. So like this is a quick visual of what our thing looks like in whole. But yeah, moving forward. Um, yeah, other things that we wanted to introduce was the idea of composting. So yeah, this natural process of recycling matter, like that being organic and like food waste and like dead leaves and stuff like that, to kind of use as nutrients to grow more plants or crops in the area. So it's like kind of a cycle wherein you're able to grow new produce out of old ones. So we wanted to find ways to kind of make use of that, and we found two ways of doing that: aerobic and anaerobic. So the anaerobic is bokashi composting system, which is a at-home method that they do where it simply just throw it in a bin actually, and you let it decompose with certain like elements or like biodegradable like organisms that would eat out all the matter and leave only the nutrients left behind. So we want to find ways to incorporate this into the structure, to also like add ways to add greenery back into what people see as like modern day concrete jungles and such. So Jazz, if you could talk about this one.
From what Carlos said, so we kind of focused on two types of composting, but we also wanted to study the process of composting because this greatly affected the design of our building. So just to highlight the parts, so basically, first part would be finding an ideal area where it would be kind of isolated from people, simply because it might cause some smell and it needs space from people. And next part would be the actual compost material being chopped or shredded into smaller pieces from their original sizes, and then additional moisture would be needed. And we found out that the turning and mixture of compost speeds the process up, and we had to like consider that it will provide some kind of steam while it's composting. And lastly, for you to like know that it's ready, you have to actually see it and find that color, the dark color that you're looking for. So these are the things that we've considered in designing compost areas all throughout the site. Um, move on. Yeah, next.
Okay, so in line with composting, we actually wanted to talk about what outcomes or outputs we'd like to get back from composting. So we mentioned how it would create a cycle in terms of turning old plants into or old produce into new ones, and we thought of like creating a self-sufficient system in the structure that would produce like all these kinds of different produce. Because yeah, while we have like parks and greenery, we also wanted it to be something that'll be interactive with the people. So instead of just normal like ornamental plants, we wanted to be crop that would actually grow and turn into something that the people could interact with, whether that be through harvesting, consumption, that will and such, which we will talk about later. So we chose these products or these household fruits because and vegetables because these are actually staples in almost every recipe. So like even just a combination of a few of these can actually give you quite a few different possibilities, and like it would help out in the commercial aspect of certain portions of our structure. And then we also want to talk about water hyacinths. So these are invasive plants that we've noticed have been like heavily seen in Pasig River, like which is right beside our site. So we wanted to tackle the idea or see how we could incorporate it to kind of like tackle the idea of how to manage the overpopulation or how to better use it in everyday life. So as you can see, yeah, it's an ornamental plant, but it is like heavily invasive in the sense that it actually produces and like reproduces really really fast. So it needs a lot of sunlight, liquid fertilizer, and nutrients within the water. So it tends to kind of suck out all of the nutrients from other plants. So like we wanted to grow them in the site, isolated, while finding ways to make use of them. And then relating back to our concept of the multi-generational city, we actually named three main stakeholders, that being kids, adults, and the elderly. So these are three distinct age groups within like every Filipino family that we think would be able to interact with our building in a unique way, given their unique way of going, or their unique functions or unique needs throughout the day. And then we thought about how that could relate back to our idea of composting and how to kind of relate the two. So yeah, harvesting, consumption, and farming, three general ideas between the use of agriculture and composting, and how they could relate to people and the kinds of spaces that they would need to kind of uh, do these actions. So yeah, next one, we wanted to map out like kind of the process of getting these organic waste and turning it into composting, and then try to figure out how these processes can actually turn into programs for the structure. So we found like different ways of like mapping it out and like turn these into different programs into the structure. So yeah, there's like internal waste, dried hyacinths, which is important because this dried hyacinths can actually help aerate the composting process, allowing air to flow like evenly all throughout the bin, and external waste collection, which means that we can also help out the surrounding community in collecting their waste and turning it into something more. And then just a quick overview, like this is the sun path. We cut, as you can see, there's actually a form already. We'll talk about that later, but we'll go back to this slide as well as this one. This is the wind analysis we did. But in relation to that, we wanted to show like our kind of iterations or like sun carving in a sense. We wanted to show especially the idea that we cut a valley right in the middle. So the orientation of that valley coincides with the way the wind blows into the structure as well as the sun path. So the reason why we did this was to maximize the natural resources or natural like elements and try to create maybe like an alfresco environment in the site to make it as efficient and like natural as possible. So yeah, and then these are the different experiences as mentioned before, relating to each stakeholder and how they could like help out or like further define how each person will interact or like journey through the structure. So that being farming, consumption, and composting. And we'll talk about that later or further in the programs naman. Or yeah, after doing further research on these crops, we actually deemed that water hyacinths are actually edible. So they're similar in taste and texture to celery, which helps relate it to the other crops in the rasa that we chose. And they can be eaten in many different ways, and they're actually quite nutritious and are common in salads and mixed vegetables. But what is interesting, since it's actually very close to celery, is that from my personal experience with cooking, I know about something called the mirepoix. So it's a French flavor base within their cuisine, which is found a lot in their soups, their dishes, and stuff like that, where it actually creates the foundation of flavor for them. And it's really all it is sautéed onions, carrots, and celery. And given, water hyacinths can act as a celery substitute, we plan on using water hyacinths within our commercial like eating establishments to help solidify its place within the structure and like find a way to use it every day and like kind of combat its like overpopulation, I guess. And then one other thing we wanted to use to actually dictate the way we design spaces was therapeutic horticulture. So this is the practice of interacting with plants through licensed like therapeutic sessions with practitioners, and doing so has been proven to actually help people with their mentality and their psyche, and has proven to like help people alleviate anxiety and other mental issues. So its common users include veterans, children, the elderly, and those dealing with addictions and health problems. So there are two ways of going about this: direct and indirect. With direct being, interacting with these plants, like whether it be maintaining them, trimming them, watering them, potting them, and indirect, which is doing activities around plants or in environments that contain a lot of plants. So that be journaling, smelling, meditating, looking, reflecting, or anything that internally like kind of helps a person. So the presence of plants, even just that, actually helps a lot. And we wanted to dictate our spaces through those two different methods. So our spaces that include function were guided by direct horticulture, that being ways for people to interact with the plants in the function of that space. And then for pathways, hallways, and even the catchment areas, we went with direct, indirect horticulture to kind of help build the environments like kind of atmosphere and help people feel more calm throughout these areas, and would lead them to the direct horticulture spaces. So these are sample renders of like the areas we have. So as you can see, this is our like kind of catchment area in the middle, and like we surrounded them in plants and like included it into like different furniture. So this is really meant to just kind of break the feeling or like the amount of like heavy concrete, to kind of like visually make it easier and more appealing to the eye and more interesting as well. So the pop of color, the lighting and texture like help a lot. And then this is also how we imagine the food park area. So the plants here would be, yeah, edible in a sense also, so that the way people would interact with it is they'd harvest the crop on their own. They choose which ingredients are freshest and which ones they like the most, and would bring it to the person to have it cooked. And that way they'd learn about the ingredients, the recipe, how it's cooked. And while they enjoy their meal, they also enjoy that they learned how to prepare it and could possibly bring it home to them as well. So it's kind of like a learning experience and journey for them also. And then Jazz, would you talk about this?
Another program of ours is actually a chapel, because we wanted to deviate from a little from all the commercial things ongoing with the other side of the building. We wanted a more communal space, since we are designing a community inside, and we wanted to have a chapel inside, which also allows them to experience the different um process of composting all throughout the site. I mean the area of the chapel. Later on, in the plans, you would see how um, the water hyacinth propagation is actually forming a canal system all throughout the chapel. Um, yeah.
And then this one is our kind of lounge area. So we wanted to create a productivity space, like a library connected to a coffee shop that we'll talk about later. But this is a lounge space within that said library to allow people to kind of rest, because yeah, as we all know, naman, work can get quite stressful at times. So it's important to like give these people a space for them to like rest or like kind of step away from the work. And the way we incorporate the plants is that we can actually control the visibility into the area. So of course, while resting, like it's important to have it like private in a sense. So the people of the area can actually control how visible it is, or they can like change it up depending on how much they like, trim the plants or like maintain the plants. So it also adds that level of control for the people in the structure. And then this one is on top of the food park. So this is a like kind of garden space and like playground area for the kids. So like for example, while the adults are still eating and the kids are kind of done already, like they don't want to eat anymore, they can have fun with each other, they can play around and like kind of enjoy their time with other kids around the area in this space. And then Jazz.
One of the physical manifestations of composting through our structure is this, and we wanted to. This is how the bokashi bins are encapsulated, or it merged in our columns. Not all of the yeah. It's only some of the columns all throughout our site, but most of them are has this, and this is mainly the bokashi composting diagram that we made to show how it works, where um it would collect moisture from the farm above, and this is later on seen in our church building, where there would be a mezzanine farm on top, and below it would be the waste collection area, where water hyacinth is being propagated. At the same time, there would be bokashi composting bins. Bokashi composting. Yeah, bins. And this is how it would look like on a 3D view, where there would be a wire mesh surrounding a column, and inside would be bokashi composting bins, and all throughout around that area would be um, plant boxes that could benefit from the compost that we would get from the bins. This is how it looks like in a rendered view. This is the mezzanine farm that we have.
And then this one's just another example of it in the coffee shop area. But yeah, in general, we're just showing how it highlights certain spaces all throughout. And then this one here naman is our idea on how to incorporate bokashi bins again. So through our research, we studied that bokashi composting, you can actually speed up the process of its composting by agitating the material inside it every so often. So we thought of how do we do that naturally and like create this kind of a spectacle out of it. So what led us to this idea was the concept of, or the idea of those like kind of spinning pinwheels that windmills, and we wanted to incorporate that into the bins. So the wind that would naturally pass through the valley would actually turn the bins like every so often and would cause them to kind of shuffle around a little bit every now and then. And we thought that the little noise that would come from it, or maybe the color shifts that would come, like, or the movement from it on the facade, would like kind of create a spectacle or like something that the people in the valley of the structure could really look up at and like wonder what's happening, and would kind of interest them in learning more about it. So yeah, and this is just like a sample concept art of where it would like work in our like floors. So it's here on the railings next to the bridges crossing the valley. And this is just what it looks like on the render. So as mentioned, like this is the bridge next to it, and then this will be the composting bins on the church area. So yeah.
And we wanted to make sure that the spinning composting bins would actually spin, and we calculated like the enough amount of compost that we would allow to go inside, and we found out that it has to be 1/3 full. And we've calculated the size of the actual composting bins, and it would be around 600 by 600 millimeters in size. I mean, in side view, but the actual length of it would be 680 millimeters, and it would be two composting bins, spinning as one. And we wanted to kind of make sure that it would be below chest level, because in case of spillage, we wouldn't want it to be on top. Yeah.
And then next up, we want to incorporate something that we, or like our idea that led us to design the facade of the structure actually. So we thought of the structure as a kind of hidden grotto, or like the kind of heart and soul of the people and of the community. So we thought of how do we kind of interest people or get people to kind of go towards that. And what we thought of was actually just having a ambiguous giant plant wall to kind of bring people in. So the reason for this is it kind of breaks the sense of scale on the floors and the size of the structure. So from the front, all you see is plants, and like you kind of wonder what is that? What could that really be? So that falls to the first stage, the interest and attraction phase. So looking at that, you start wondering what is that, and it causes you to kind of come closer. So upon like going closer to the facade, which is like here, you start to notice there's like noise coming from inside. There's like a little bit of movement you could see behind the plants like happening inside it. So as you look close into it, you start realizing there are people in there, and they're like doing a lot of different things. There's like a lot of different functions. So it starts to interest you, and like how did these people get in there, causing you to kind of explore the site or the structure around, and you kind of go around to kind of find the entrance that leads you to this area. And it's at that stage where the building that kind of like not much shut you out, but like kind of feels detached or like kind of like separate from the community around it starts to open up to you through the valley, which is the actual entrance in the center. So we wanted our structure to open up or be completely open from the center, so that like when you explore it, you feel as if there's so many different ways to go. There's no just one direct pathway, and there's so much possibilities to kind of discover. So we wanted our thing to kind of feel like as mentioned, a hidden grotto that would kind of embody the heart and soul of the community and the different people that would use it. So this is facade. This is what the front would look like without the plant wall. So yeah, this would show what's behind, and this is where they'd see and notice the people moving. So this would be a food park, the water hyacinth park, uh, and like the hallways and like staircases. So in general, just a lot of movement, which would like kind of agitate people to kind of come closer. And this is the right elevation, and which we'll be showing the rest of the elevations. Pero the main thing to note is that, as mentioned, it's the middle that's actually the busiest. So we want it to look complex from the middle, and then the other sides and like kind of going towards the middle would feel kind of barren, and like it feels like you still are trying to figure out how to get there. So yeah, these are the other elevations, and this is the back elevation. So it kind of opens up from here also. You can see all the different functions. And these are like our plans. So as mentioned before, we kind of broke into two structures because we wanted a more commercially viable option, like ways for people to maybe earn money and profit while having still community aspects that would kind of separate and would be focused on the relationship and the interaction between people. So we have, but while it is like entirely about relationships, the commercial aspects are still about interactions and force you to kind of talk to people. So this is the Water Hyacinth Park. So this acts as a kind of plant shop and like space dedicated for like actual therapeutic sessions, like based on horticulture. So that is a whole industry in itself. And we thought that by combining that with a plant shop, then the plants that these people would have sessions with and like learn how to take care of, they can eventually like buy their own plants or like take care of it in their own house to practice as well. So it's really all about taking home more than just the plant itself, but the idea of how you could use it and how it could like I guess alter your lifestyle. And then we also have a supermarket to kind of sell like the harvested goods from all the plants around the site. And then yeah, this is the church area. Jazz, if you'd like to
And as mentioned earlier, the church area would have a canal system, and it would hit the waste collection area and the chapel. It flow the basically water hyacinth would flow around the site where the waste collection area would provide nutrients for the water. The waste collection area would segregate trash from different people, and at the same time would turn them into compost, since there would be a composting bin there directly as shown earlier.
yeah. Okay. And then Jazz.
This is how the mezzanine floor plan looks, and basically the highlight of this is just the farm on top of the chapel, um, where we would harvest the plants that were explained earlier by Carlos. And um, basically, if you look at it from the three main components of the design, which is harvesting, a farming, harvesting, and what was the other one?
And
Uh,
consumption.
and consumption. The farming aspect of it would be mainly on uh, below the cafeteria, and this one, the chapel, on top of the chapel.
Yeah. And this one is the second floor of the commercial like side of it. So as mentioned, yeah, this is the kind of food park cafeteria area, which would like help or like have the people interact with the plants for the food aspect of it. And then we also wanted to include a kind of cafe, coffee shop, because like a lot of people naman, as we all know, like to enjoy a cup of coffee in the morning, and like it to them actually feels like a ritual in itself that kind of calms them down, gets them ready for the day. And we wanted to kind of incorporate that into therapeutic horticulture as well. So we created a space that would allow you to kind of perform your said ritual of like having coffee while being in a more calming environment than like something that's just bare concrete. So the walls are also like plants and stuff. So it's supposed to kind of amplify the feeling. And overall, we just wanted the structure to be a general hangout place for people like who need to do anything really, whether it be to study, to work, or to hang out with friends, or even to just spend the rest of their day. So we want to create spaces where they can hang out and do anything or any work that they need to if needed. Jazz.
Um, just to breeze through this, on top of the church buildings would have different meeting rooms and playgrounds for the church goers, where kids could go there if they are not participating in any church activities, and meeting rooms for different church activities and church planning, like Bible studies and so on.
And this one is the third floor of the whole structure. So this is the library that connects to the coffee shop through a staircase here in the middle or in the edge. And this, yeah, acts as the kind of productivity space for them to have like group meetings or work sessions, as well as the common room or lounge that we mentioned, kanina. And then this one here is the greenhouse garden for kids to play in while the rest of the adults are eating, or for them to kind of plant more edible crops as well. And then the space here in the middle is the catchment area, an open space led by indirect horticulture. And then jazz. Well, yeah, this is the meeting rooms of jazz also, if you want to add
Okay.
more.
No, it's okay. I think we should move on to the fabric.
Okay, yeah, we'll just like breeze through the sections, like just to show them. Yeah, these are the sections and the rest of the like renders of the areas in it. So with this also, as you can see, there are also like the fabric structure here. So on the outskirts. So this is what we'll be talking about next. So this is the concept we want to do. So as we all know, a fabric structure is supposed to is meant to kind of encapsulate what every structure in the city is supposed to be like, or like the general idea of it. And we wanted it to be mixed use because we wanted every structure to have a little bit of every part of the city, that being residential, commercial, and even a park system. So yeah, as we know, cities nowadays don't really seem to have that many parks or greenery around. So we wanted to kind of incorporate that into the structure itself to add a new way of exploring the city. Because having parks in the on the street level, yeah, it's effective, but there's still like cars around the area, the streets around it. So you can still feel kind of surrounded by all these cars, and like when they would park in the street or on the park itself, it doesn't feel as safe for pedestrians. So we wanted to create a kind of safe haven for these pedestrians by creating a network connecting every building through a kind of like park developed floor. So this is on the second floor of every structure actually, and we wanted to we wanted the second floor to act as the kind of lobby or general like first place you'd go to. So this would connect you to the residential on top and the commercial floor at the bottom. That way, it's more pedestrian friendly and would kind of discourage the use of cars talaga. So this is the commercial floor. So the use of it naman can be anything relating to the commercial industries. Pero our example here is actually of a bookstore relating to how like kids would, or how we wanted kids to use it as well. So we'd have like reading areas. Maybe so these are like platforms that are like kind of tiered, going downwards to here. And for like in general, the commercial floor is actually open to development depending on whatever is needed for the commercial space. And this one is the second floor plan of this is the park. So these are the green spaces as well as the same columns that were implemented in our special structure that would like have like the Bukashi composting systems. And then we have these small like bridgeways that are shown here, but they will actually extend further and connect to other fabric buildings next to them. So this is what connects the network, connecting every structure, or not every structure, but would create multiple networks to have different ways of experiencing the city. And then the staircase leads up to the residential area. So for the residential area, we wanted it to be quaint and small because we wanted to encourage people to do their activities on the outside or out in public with the rest of the people. So yeah, we wanted it small, and like every residential floor is actually designed the same way. But as it goes up one level, it actually rotates 90 degrees. So this is to allow the balconies of every residential floor to kind of have a different view of the city, giving them like different variety and like different scenery. So everything feels like new to them as well still. And these are the elevations of the fabric structure. The hatching here is actually the wire mesh where the plants will be mounted on. So yeah, and then this is how the base section or works for the fabric, which also shows like how the wire mesh will be mounted for the columns and for the walls. So yeah, it's just two steel brackets anchored into the wall, and then the wire mesh will be attached to that said anchor point. And these are the cross sections to show like how it works internally. And these are just the remainder of our visuals for the fabric structure. But yeah, sir, that's all from us. Thank you.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
So, hold on. I'll just clean this.
Sige.
Hindi ko na-record yung comment ko kala, ano? Carlos.
So,
Okay, so yeah, afternoon. This is like the final render of our first building, Malunggay building. Okay, yeah, next. So this is just to show our site location and yeah, okay, next. Yeah, okay. So basically our building revolves around the malunggay or the moringa oleifera because of how it has multiple health benefits, and we basically list down the different like the growing conditions of the malunggay, which is it needs a tropical and dry sort of climate, and it likes heat, and it requires well-drained soil. Okay, next. So we basically researched and studied sheets of like the measurements of the malunggay, like how high it would be and like the timeline of its plant life. And we've decided to create a building that has like a cafe for for producing malunggay tea. So because of that, it requires like a planting method that would multiply the malunggay. So we decided to go with a semi-intensive monoculture method in terms of the agriculture of the malunggay. Okay, next. So yeah, we basically broke down like the things that we needed, like for the commercial, it needs a tea house and the product. And also for the maintenance, we decided to settle with the drainage method would be putting the malunggay on raised plant beds and using drain tiles. And then for the compost that is needed for the malunggay, we decided to settle with vermicompost. And yeah, so we just list down the products and whatever other things that we wanted to include in the project. Okay, next. So yeah, so basically for the drainage is the raised bed, the drain tile, a compost would be vermicompost, and inspired by this new method of vermicomposting where all of the kitchen waste was just thrown into one bin, and then you naturally wait for the worms to rise up to the top of that bin. And also we decided to go with a roof garden in order to have the plants enjoy as much sunlight as needed. Yeah, good. Next. Yeah, so we decided to stack up all those programs on, yeah, we decided to like stack all the programs that way vertically. Next. And we ended up with multiple iterations. So basically the part with the green roof, it's supposed to be facing the south portion of the site, so we could maximize the amount of sunlight that the plants would receive. And we went through multiple iterations until we finally settled with the one on the lower right, which is basically from that like box formation. We just decided to condense it all with some of the taller malunggays being around the building, because we're supposed to use those taller malunggays to harvest seeds with, so we could use those seeds to filter water with, because that's also another function of malunggays, that you can use its seed to create filters, water filters. Okay, next. So yeah, this is the ground floor plan of the building. So it's mostly the parking commercial area. And then on the lower right corner is the compost area where people could get their compost from. And it's on the bottom of the cafe area that will be shown later. Okay, thanks. So this would be the second floor, and then the cafe area is on top of the compost area, and then the rest is the commercial, and yeah. Okay, next. And then this would be the roof garden. So basically the roof garden contains all the malunggay. And then there are like the smaller tea houses that people could like drink tea in if they want to in privacy while enjoying the scenery of the roof garden. Okay. So yeah, this would be the south elevation of the building. And then there's the balconies where you can pick the malunggay leaves from the taller malunggay trees, and where you can also take their seeds. And the drain tile being exposed out of the plant boxes. Okay. And this would be the east elevation. Next. This would be the north, and then yeah. Okay, north, that's the west, and that's mostly where the storefront of the commercial areas are. Okay, next. Yeah, and then this would be our longitudinal section. Okay, next. And this would be our cross sections showing our special compost columns. Yeah, okay, next. So yeah, and this would be our base section. Yeah, just showing the materials. Yeah, next. Oh, and this would be the column. So some of our columns have this like compost bins where you basically just throw the kitchen waste on the very top, and then on the bottom is like the layer inhabited by the worms that are going to rise up towards the top of the compost in order to digest the kitchen waste. And then on the bottom is they will just leave the finished compost that could be collected at the bottom, along with like sometimes they produce this thing called worm water that could also be used for gardening. Okay, next. And yeah, this is like our special section just showing how the drain tile would work, like how it would collect the excess moisture from the plant boxes and then bring it down to the ground for the taller malunggay trees, and how some of the tables also function as like a compost bin, and then people could just hang their malunggay back, yeah. Okay, they could just hang their malunggay there just to dry. And there's also like some of the tables of the coffee house have some saplings in front of them where they could just plant the malunggay. Yeah. Okay, next. And this would be the tea house. So basically the tea house roof is designed that way in order to collect rainwater, and then that rainwater will go down the water filter that uses the seed byproduct from the malunggay. So yeah, this would be our vignettes for the malunggay building. Okay, next na. Yeah. Yeah, and this would be the garden area. Next. And this is just the whole entire building. Okay, so Bernadette, ikaw na.
So this is our special building, aerial shot of the building. So we decided to put the landmark location at near the Serpelenos Park. So it's like an extension of the Serpelenos Park. So the building is a recreational site, mostly for people to fish, play, and for passive transportation for sa river, for small boats. So this is since it's an extension of the park, it is accessible to so there will be a pedestrian site. A pedestrian access going to the site, and deck connecting to the Serpelenos Park. So this is the iteration. So as you can see, our process of making the iterations is mostly cutting an open space for children to play, for people to interact outside, and a deck for view deck and fishing spots. So this is the ground floor plan. It is mostly consists of commercial food tenants and a play area, and also a fishing area at the lower part. The second floor area, this is where people can rest and have events and a library so people can have additional recreational activities indoors. The west elevation, the south elevation, the east elevation, and the north elevation. For seeing the view deck and the fishing spot. The longitudinal section and the cross section.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'll just explain that some of the columns that are submerged under Pasig River would have this special material called carbon. So basically, carbon is like this fiber material that could cause pollutants that pass through it to decay over time and basically create this slimy sludge. And because of the nature of the material being something like a hairy fiber, it could also act as a habitat for the fishes of Pasig River. So yeah, it's basically a way to mitigate the pollution within Pasig River. Okay,
And this is the base section. We provided a glass panel or a storefront for the commercial areas. And this is the view between the play area and the view deck, showing the fishing area and the ferry terminal of the small boats. And this is an aerial, another aerial view of the building. And that's it.
Thank you for that. Let me look at the base section of this building. Okay, so what is the? Let me just understand the roofing material.
It's a flat roof, sir. A warm roof. Flat.
What is the size? What is the thickness of the roof slab? Like, do you have an idea? Because based on the scale, if the railing is 1,000 millimeter, and then this is probably 1/5 or 200 all overall. Do you get it? Overall. So if it's 200 mm, normally you need to have 100 mm for the concrete slab. Do you get it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is this a concrete slab or what kind of roofing is this?
Like insulation.
No, insulation is for heat. What kind of when you say insulation, it's the one that you put on the roof so that it won't heat up too much. So what is the roofing material on top to prevent rain or sun? What is the material?
Yung waterproof membrane and tied with sheets and paper control battery.
Oh, so it's not waterproof. It's not. It's just a membrane. What is that membrane? Okay. I understand. You might. You need to review your building tech, because at this stage, you need to be able to understand what you are designing. Because looking at the perspective, can we go to the section? I knew that it's not going to work. Especially this one, I know that this is the work of a non-ArcGIS1, of a lower ArcGIS1 student or ArcGIS1 student who doesn't have a clue what a section is, what the section will entail. Like, look at the first floor and the slab between the first floor and the second floor. There's more protection between the two floors compared to the one that will receive the rainwater, especially during typhoon. Does this make sense to you?
Sir.
Huh?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Because in the with the untrained eye, this looks like a building without roofing when you're looking at the section. All right. So yeah, can we move to the other section of the other building? And even the elevation doesn't feel like it's it is well detailed. And when you are presenting a floor plan as well, the first building has a lot of redeeming qualities, but the second building, the landmark building, it is as if that you forgot the qualities of your first building, which is actually a typical building, and then a special building should be a more special and more well thought of building in terms of details, etc. Going back to the floor plan, you need to be able to provide a layout of the furniture, because that is the evidence that all of the program and the users will be accommodated by showing the cubicles of the toilet, showing the desk, etc. And then because on your upper artifices, you will be required to provide computations like how many people it's going to accommodate, the room can accommodate. They get it? So it's not enough that you just provide a room. Now going back to this first building, this has more maturity in terms of architectural section. The other one, it feels as if it was designed by a student from Design 1 and you're already in Design 6. This one, somewhat more mature because you can really see the proper thicknesses of the elements involved. Did you see the difference?
Yes.
Okay, di ba? Di ba? Kita mo yung
Yes, sir.
roofing?
May
Diba? Dito, kitang-kita mo na you're protected from the elements, right? So, yeah. And then, sige, can we go to the other slides of this building? This feels more complete. And I understand because this was the one that you focus on. And maybe if I'm going to provide a negative comment on this particular building, as I criticize the horizontality of the first group, the too much horizontal quality of the design. This one maybe the term facadism. Can we go to the perspectives of this building? I love the base section as well. I mean, you have so many ideas in that base section. I can really see the architectural considerations. No, the entire building. Yeah. So, okay. One thing about I understand that this is a building about this malunggay plant, but you covered it too much. The building was covered. The architecture was covered by a lot of plants that it almost felt like you're hiding your design. Do you get it? Do you get it, guys? So try to when it comes to presentation, visual presentation, there's also a messaging. So the message that this perspective is sending me is that you are hiding your design. You get it? So I want you to be careful with that next time you have an architectural project. You need to be proud of it. Although I'm not saying that we didn't do this when I was a student. Because there was a time when I was a student wherein the perspective had to be done manually. And of course, we're not talented in manual perspective. So we had to hide some, bad aspects of bad features of the building with the tree or with the person, etc. So, but I'm just giving you an example. And if you are proud of the design, you need to expose it. So, and then can we go to the other, maybe elevation, so that I can see the actual design of the building? Yeah. So, is this the kind of aesthetic that you guys like with the arches, etc.?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes or no, Antea?
Yes.
Okay. So I can see the consistency, even with the shed of the water tanks, but you need to provide again structural support for the roof. Normally, when we're talking about conventional design, when you look around, it is supported by trusses that is also following the profile of your shed that is curved also. But I think it can also be done in concrete so that it's cleaner. But I don't know what your aesthetic is when it comes to the support. But when I'm looking at the shed, the curve thing, it needs what they call that, a support. Do you get it?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is what I was talking about. You sort of hid this behind the trees. If in this particular elevation, you adjusted the opacity of the tree, you can also do the same thing with the perspective. You can actually reduce the opacity so that it can show the actual architectural design of the building. All right.
Yes, sir.
Sige, can we go to the base section? Because this is really what, this really showed some of the innovations that you introduced in the sheets. This showed that you know architecture, that you know how you can build it, how you can tell the contractor to build it because you have knowledge. And this goes for everyone. I want you guys to be knowledgeable of the basic thicknesses of the slab, the general dimensions of the columns, and then the general dimension or the depth of the floor to ceiling slab soffit, so that the moment your client or even your architecture professor ask you, what is the ceiling of this story of this level? What is the ceiling height? What is the floor to floor, etc.? You have an instant answer ready because these are questions that are very relevant, especially with clients. They are very particular about ceiling heights, and then but you cannot dictate that unless you know the elements, because the elements of the architecture influence the ceiling heights, the floor to floor height, etc. So so I'm pretty happy with the base section because, like I said, this is what is expected from you at this level. And sometimes it's good that you guys practice doing this base section even with the party, because somehow it gives you an idea already the kind of thicknesses or dimensions you will have for the entire building. So the moment you create a longitudinal section or a cross section, you already know the actual thickness, so you can just shade it because I know you have a base section, right?
Yes.
All right. So when it comes to flat roofing, except for this one, if it is going to be just flat, normally the flat slab has a slight inclination or slope. Because it's gonna be totally flat because you don't want the water to settle on top. Okay?
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Sige. Do you have any questions?
Sir, yung about sa video, like, what about yung walkthrough? Parang we recorded it again or parang...
Yeah, to follow na lang. To follow
You
na
don't
lang.
have, sir, you don't have like what's your preferred due date for the video? Like within what from what time right now? Like
Sige,
within a week.
sige, let's talk about it later on. Let's finish this session first, ha? Importante, nakasubmit kayo for this final review. Okay?
Oh, sir, wait. Last question.
Yeah, sure.
Would you like us to edit the roof of the bay section for the second building, since as you said it's not that good?
Yeah. Sige. But I'm going to grade but this grading will be based on this presentation, ha? Kasi we
Yes,
have a
sir.
deadline also. I cannot wait for the improvements because we have a deadline. Actually, we have a meeting pala today, and I just forgot it because I had to prioritize our final review, and I cannot do I cannot read.
We'll just Jowel screen share muna.
Sige, sure.
Wait, okay, sorry. Hold up.
So before anything, like before introducing our works for this term, we wanted to kind of touch upon and remember where our buildings like ideas came from. So then if we can open our master plan. Yeah. So just to kind of show it and everything. So kind of upon reimagining Manila and everything, we learned a lot about the need to place a even greater appreciation towards culture and the life that remains in the city. So we understood how thoughtfulness was really the key to creating a place for this community to be able to thrive in and live as though the city was just made for them. So kind of overcoming this lost path that Manila was in, we kind of took a more sensitive approach to find a way to embrace every aspect of the community and in turn imagine a place that creates like really beautiful memories for every person in the city to be able to experience. So for the residential building, we felt that this was a great opportunity for us to be able to implement this new vision that we had for the city and the vision of freedom and acceptance and everything. And we wanted to design in intuition following certain guidelines that we set for the city. So if you can move to the two main principles.
Is it here? Okay.
So yeah, for our residential building, instead of kind of establishing something kind of direct or a system or anything like that, we decided to tackle it in such a way that we established two main principles that would be repeated throughout the different structures in the city, along with our special building that we will explain later on. So since we found it to be like a place that could kind of show and embody healing spaces and what's that, the inclusivity. We wanted to be able to show how the healing spaces through the senses could be applied into the architecture, as well as designing and orienting spaces to be able to create really interesting interactions between people and foster inclusivity amongst the community. So yeah, you can see here our research on healing spaces and how it could be applied into our design. And the next one is how we viewed inclusivity in a way that it's really just accepting people and being able to really integrate every person through the community. So first of all, like with the fabric building, if we can move to the slides for fabric building. So in designing these spaces, like for the fabric building, we wanted to really just study first which residential building we wanted to apply these principles onto. So then what really stood out to us that really embodied, that really could display it to a really, to a greater extent was the elevated residential. So then we wanted to play around with how it could like affect the community it's around. So then yeah, we just did this really quick site analysis, studying the spaces within the area, and then next. And then yeah, also this one, but we can guys do that one. And then so along with allowing for inclusivity and everything, we actually we continued this idea of creating spaces that are of different floor areas, like different sizes, because with creating ambiguity in the purpose of a specific residential that only caters possibly to like a family, like families or the individual or like students or everything, we wanted to create a residential building that had every person in mind and had different opportunities that could be applied into the type of person that would live inside this building. And also because of the different spaces that aren't similar to one another, like there are some spaces that are studios, some spaces that are two-story or even like a lot larger and wider than the rest of them. They were really integrated in a sort of jigsaw puzzle piece that was harmoniously placed together to form these interactions of people of different lifestyles. So instead of segregating these people, we wanted to be able to kind of foster and encourage communication. So, okay, next. This one is shows how healing spaces is then applied. But then I think we can explain further on this in our design itself, which we'll show now. So
Yes.
with this one, we wanted to be able to, yeah, kind of orient it as you could see in the floor plan. So let's go to the first floor plan. So then with this one, you should be kind of apply like studio type apartments where it's smaller, but then there are also like 2-bedroom apartments so that accommodating to family. And also we wanted to reimagine how residential buildings are in a sense, because instead of thinking about it in a linear manner, we wanted the uh, the movement around the building to be more organic as well. Next slide. So this is just showing the other apartments within the space. So you could see a variety of sizes and everything. And also its interaction with the single garden in the middle that people would be able to access. And it serves as a public garden, but then each person's interaction with it kind of changes in terms of where they are residing in the building itself. So yeah. And with kind of interacting with each other, I guess we can show the render actually of how, in a manner which views are created to the outside and applied to creating views inside that are kind of made strategic in a way. We wanted these people to have more opportunities to encounter each other rather than like spontaneous interactions rather than something very linear and everything. So yeah, even this, it's a lot more subtle, but then in a sense, there's still a sense of interaction with different people. Okay. Now Jal will be explaining how the fabric building kind of embodies healing spaces as well.
Okay. So so basically the provisions, and since we have this unique spot in our lot and it's quite different from any other lots, it allowed the different openings, not just if we go kind of back to what we see here in these renders, it opens spots out going outside to different vistas, but ultimately what happens is what's inside. And that's why in our view renders, it's how what happens inside is what's most important, and what happens outside is almost the least of your concerns. It becomes a background. And because um having these provisions and orientations of views looking out of the rest of the city was important to allow the structure to communicate with the neighboring population, because the idea was to almost kind of enclose yourself in this building instead of communicating with everybody in the neighborhood, being that this elevated residential was built so that everyone would basically know each other in a way. So our main idea was to really um, find and create communities that can work together and to make different bonds and to create different unique, uh, I guess, residential housing. If this was sort of, if this concept was sort of mimicked all around the space. So at the same time, like looking inward, um, yeah, like looking inward, you have this sense of, or like you immediately create communication by having these linear views inside the space, and the having the vegetation inside, not outside, creates more unique ideas in a way that or I mean a lot more unique dynamics in a way that um what is grown inside is totally different from each and every house that will be built if this was mimicked all around the village. But although since we don't really have something like a diagram to show variety, because our main goal was this eclectic idea of creating this housing residents residents
Yeah, and
um
actually to add
yeah.
with that one, with the gardens and everything and how the garden would actually encourage interaction, we felt that the garden could also contribute to healing spaces because people's interaction, their like friendship with the vegetation inside could assist to their healing in a place that is meant to be for healing specifically since is a home. And also in this garden, we felt that in the roofscape, we kind of showed how the roof is like kind of diagonal facing like leading water towards the inside when it rains or possibly attracting sunlight within the space. We wanted to bring life inside rather than it being more of a capsule or a home that people just stay in and end up experiencing life outside of it. So in a sense, by bringing water into the building, which is a very important element in our structure, uh, we wanted people to experience, like for example, this vegetation and most especially water, which people have a very innate connection to kind of have like a shot of um, calmness or serenity through that, and also how the water would really bring life to not just the vegetation, but also create really interesting um, kind of healing experiences because of the way water would kind of refract light when light is being placed onto it, as well as its water's interaction to the building itself, where it would flow onto the building rather than outside of it. So yeah, that's actually it for the residential building. So you can kind of see here a lot more of how, for example, with the different types of weather, time of day, or even the different types of movement people would choose to go around the building, the experience could be very different for every individual. So that's a really important feature that we wanted to incorporate, especially to be shown in our fabric building. So yeah, this is the sections that we made, and it shows the movements within the building. So as you can see here, even as people are living their own private lives within their respective apartments, they still kind of go towards a single area, which is in the center of the building, and be able to interact with each other and kind of heal together in a sense. Yeah, so now we can move towards the special building, actually. So
This one, this one. All right, so to introduce the skate park, um it was really built on the very first idea, right? On the in last term, having that fight against exclusivity brought by the need to merge individuals instead of segregating these different people of different lifestyles. We If you remember how there are these signs that says that these people cannot skate in these spaces, um, in a way that that was the point that we wanted a place for them, and we wanted to expand that idea to sort of use different concepts like dreams, and to delve into the culture of skating and how it affects the culture of people in that space. So in pursuit of like creating these spaces to heal the self, the importance of community is at times disregarded in all so in all order to be able to achieve wellness for the individual, the city needs to understand the necessity of improving the bonds of a society. So in this means our hopes to create a skate park is equal to our hopes to create a more cohesive, a more united um, community, that in a way that this becomes um, the healing space for everybody else, that is driven by skating. So yeah. um,
So we actually felt that the skate park would be a really great structure to build on and to use in our project. So since we wanted to really value healing and inclusivity, and as Jao mentioned earlier, how the healing of the self is the healing of the community rather is a very important and integral role in healing the self. So then, since the skating community is one amongst those people who were left behind, pushed aside, and forgotten, making them the perfect representation of society's outliers or even like just the neglected in general. Um, so driven away just from the sight of their wooden boards and everything, they're a really uninvited group of people that aren't just searching for a place in the city to call their home and kind of find a place that they belong in. So then looking to find a place that belongs to them, it's kind of challenging and an uncomplicated thing because kind of tapping into how skaters view urban design and architecture. It's really different from like a regular person because with skaters, they really find different opportunities to the different uses of architecture. So similarly to dreams, dreams with memories and everything and things that are very familiar to us, very direct. There are a lot of different interpretations dreams could apply our memories into creating the different settings that could then like play as a place where we would, have our dreams play out in. So using that and understanding the relationship of skaters with architecture, we kind of looked into designing the space in a more dynamic way where we found the ambiguity in like familiar things. Like for example, when we were kind of creating spaces that challenge the scale of certain, for example, like stairs or the combination of stairs to ramps and everything. We wanted to be able to create this skewed memory, for example, of what stairs are actually like, and then kind of play into how this could possibly create different opportunities of possibility in the space, which is something that we wanted to bring into the community as well. And since this is an important part of the skating community, like being able to interpret spaces in a more playful way and in a more engaging manner, we wanted to be able to build on this as our kind of platform and approaching the project itself. And especially like even though skate park something that is familiar, maybe parks are often open spaces generally and just like open spaces with probably a water feature and some like sports activities. But then because the skating, how skaters affect architecture is a very indirect manner and nothing that is overly specific, it actually does invite a lot more people into the space and provide different activities to allow people to interact without having to do the same thing and interact in the same activity or something like that. So then, yeah, this is what we wanted to build on. Next slide. So yeah, before anything, we did a quick site analysis again, showing the relationship of the area with the rest of the space. And then next slide. Yeah, this is just our site analysis that affected like the openings and everything. And we also, before anything else, wanted to study the movement of the skaters because yeah, even though we mentioned how skaters are see design as very open-ended, there is still the movement of the skater that we wanted to understand in a like in order to kind of allow for positive interaction between the skater and a different user. Since we wanted to have this harmony between both of them, we wanted to still be able to study the like a certain choreography that skaters do follow in a space while still creating like a freedom of movement within the area. Because freedom within the space does allow for a sense of healing as well. And then this one actually just like another diagram showing how space could be interpreted a lot differently than a regular person. And then this is something, an idea that we had before that we wanted to apply into the structure, which is recycling of wood and skateboards. And this kind of taps into the healing, the idea of healing as well, because it's instead of like throwing something that is often disregarded, like the scrap wood, we wanted to have something that is able to recycle and give life to something that seems dead or seems unusable anymore. So then by having this recycling shop, it really adds to the importance of being able to circle back from something that is like seems like closed-ended and everything. Next. And so Jal will be explaining the development of this structure.
Yeah. So when building the or when we were designing the space, to reiterate from last time, basically we wanted the circles because of this open plan that we wanted to create, and because of these circles, it was malleable to um, modify these circles if we wanted to if we wanted more inclusive, if you wanted more intimate, or if you wanted something more communal. And so from these different radii, um, we kind of extruded it and slightly gave it uh, a slant and gave it, and from this 3 meter gaps from each of these cylinders, we added a trail where this um where the main circulation happens, and where water flows, where it cleans it, and where and most of all where people would follow the dreams, and how they would follow the ego, I guess, and how um because of this trail, it becomes the house we were hoping for when we were following the concepts of a dream. Yeah, and giving it the slight like ramps for them for access, but then because of time limitations, we didn't give enough. Um, so yeah, basically, the end product is this one, but then should we show the renders? Oh wait.
So with all the researching that we did and the study of how the relationship between skaters, dreams, and familiarity and everything that comes along with it, we created the structure that Jasmine showed. So this is our elevation.
Okay.
And yeah, it looks like that. And we'll be explaining every aspect of it moving forward. So then, yeah, this is one of the elevations. So it kind of shows what Jal mentioned earlier, how we wanted to use bowls because of its free movement throughout spaces, and how it's really applied into the structure in this manner. And then, yeah, we can show the next one. And yeah, this is just the next slide. It is really interesting because with this, our structure was a lot more organic, which kind of explains the two elevations because the orientation of this building is towards the rest of the city is really different, as there's so many different openings within the area. It really allows for already in that sense a sense of freedom and how a person could interact to the structure itself. So then there's no really direct way a person could really engage with the skate park itself. But then there is that main entrance that we have, which we can show like in the render maybe,
Yeah.
or actually in the plan first,
Yeah.
the floor plan one. So then I just want to show where specifically the entrance is so that we can kind of guide you towards the rest of the structure. Oh, there.
Yeah.
So the entrance is actually here, there, where the cursor of Jao is pointing to. So then it's kind of oriented towards the pedestrian street in the front, which would allow for a lot more people who are coming from the community in the elevated area, or the elevated residential, or the rest of the community, or even just a mere visitor that's passing in the area. So then it's a lot more inviting for the like a single person. So yeah, so in this area we wanted to kind of show in a sense how through that space the movement, the effect, we wanted the study of dreams to be applied into the architecture and into the design itself. So then if you want to show the rendering
Okay. So in this spot in here, it should look like this.
so this is the main entrance. You want to explain that one?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, to deconstruct the image, basically, you see the stream that we talked about in here, where it passively, I guess, um, uh, cleans the water from collected by the bowls, collected by um, the drainage all around uh, the building. However, the main idea here, um, because we are relating it to the dreams, is that when it's more of this suction of the person, that's why the building is fairly dark inside, where because we wanted to create a narrative user towards buildings, and since the stream goes in a certain way, naturally this person would follow um this path, and sort of um go through the different buildings. But obviously this isn't like the only entrance in this space, but for that narrative and for that experience that we've hoped to make, let's say for people who experience this space for the first time, this is um the idea here, and this is the start of that narrative. And as you can see how we included um things that shouldn't be here, like graffiti, and how people manipulate the space, and how we design the space to um almost like a skate spot on it in itself, where we didn't really mean to make it a skate spot, but naturally we allow these spaces to become skate spots, because the idea of this skate park in a way is not to become a skate park, but to become a park for everybody, and to have these neutral objects like stairs with ramps uh, next to it, um, obviously allows the or the vision of a skater to skate through this without um, people not even knowing. And so it's more of this effect of startling people, or like um, showing people the different uses of this space, and how this gestures of architecture could somehow change perspectives of how people use space, and how regular stairs for circulation isn't just stairs, but could be this amazing um, clip for a video of theirs, for in a skate video of theirs. So it's really like creating culture, creating new and serendipitous ideas in these spots. And I guess you'd see lots of these ideas through some of our renders. So moving back.
If we could show the floor plan muna.
Yeah.
In a sense, because from what Jao mentioned about how um, we wanted to create that kind of approach into entering the building, we wanted to also, since it's kind of very open-ended in a sense in how a person could possibly use the entrance itself, we wanted to still tap into dreams and how using something that is very, in a way, skewed or repurposed, like an idea, whether it's an idea or a memory to be repurposed. We wanted to tap into the effect of dreams and how it would use familiarity to make a space really comfortable. And comfort is a very important aspect in the process of healing, which is something that the skate park does want to be able to foster as well and kind of instill into a person when they're going through the space itself. So then something that's familiar to every person that we felt is, yeah, that every person could have like a very similar idea, whether it's kind of different into a sense, but then the essence of it is still the same. We wanted to plan the rest of the structure and the flow of the structure inspired by the flow of a home or a house. So then each space is actually inspired by a different zone of a house, and um, each place's effect on the relationship people would have when moving with other people when moving throughout the space. So, for example, whether it's like a living room that could be transformed into a skate spot, or a bedroom even, and a dining room that could be transformed into what we now call the skate shop. It kind of applies to a lot of familiarity, even though, like for the person who isn't a skater, even though like they don't really have much, like they don't have a direct purpose to be in a skate shop, but then that familiarity gives comfort to them to be able to actually stay in the area as well as in different skate spots throughout the space. So instead of creating very direct uses of like ramps and half pipes and everything similar to the entrance itself, we wanted to allow for the different uses to be applied into how big these forms could be approached in a sense. So yeah, we can move to the floor plans showing, yeah, the movement. So first, this is the kitchen, what we call the kitchen, which is now the skateboard recycling shop, showing like the movement that Zhao's gonna explain. This one. Just
So yeah, obviously the kitchen was based on a kitchen island counter setup where circulation goes around everywhere in the middle, and basically from uh researches and videos on how um skateboard decks are recycled and turned into planks of wood. um we kind of grabbed that process, and we kind of made it culinary in a way that we gave it a way of a process, in a way, not where it's a typical workshop where you go from one thing to the other, but in this part it's almost like you go from point A to B and C, kind of like that, in a way that it's more fixed. But since it's not really um, such a big thing in our skate park, it's almost just this complementary idea of an idea that gives uh, away from the public and not the architecture itself, in a way that if you'd see in our residential renders, we'd have like these Easter eggs of these recycled furniture from this shop itself. So to imagine that this isn't really um, um, this becomes an integral part of the skate shop in a way that it gives a way to the people outside the skate park and not inside. Uh, but then things inside, such as the broken decks that are usually found or are usually um, because decks are usually broken depending on how hard you kick the tail of the board. But then usually it's not really this thing that stacks up, and so it's a slow process in a way. So furniture in this place is um, furniture making in this place is quite slow. That's the only flaw in this kitchen or like recycling shop. But then still a massive uh, it's still a massive thing to the skate park itself, and having to give back to people who doesn't necessarily skate but then are interested on using recycled furniture. Yeah. And then in this part, when we were designing the skate shop, we thought of more of a dining room, not in a way where you dine, but in a way that you build your skateboard. So in a way that even though we added a cafe in this spot, ultimately this space is where people would build their skateboards in comfort of other people around them, and having almost creating a skate park in a skate park in this sense of having various skate spots that become um, dining areas, display areas, sitting areas, um, almost gives this part of the skate park multifunctionality in a way that um, that everything is used differently from each other, whether you sit on it, whether you um, do an ollie on it or jump on it and stuff. It's different for every person, and for in different, because there's two different programs as well happening in this area. So in one sense, in one day it could be a place for events for a large community of skaters, but in other sense it could be a neutral ground for people for their coffee, maybe for their juice or something. But basically, um, it's this communal space that um, involves the construction of the skate board itself in a workshop manner, instead of like having someone do it for you. People learn from other people because um, building a skateboard is fairly easy, but it could be quite daunting for beginners.
So for this one, actually, this is the living room that we kind of interpreted to become like a food court. So then this more formal living room, in a sense, we wanted to show how this food stall area, where as you can see there's different stalls in the space, could actually be applied and integrated into the skate spot. So then not just seeing this, it's not like a food court in a very linear way. People can still use the open space as a place to sit or a place to practice their tricks on the ramp that is applied, that kind of combines itself with the staircase that could be for seating as well. So then kind of having that open-endedness, there can be a lot of interaction between skater and the non-skater here in this area, but then it still really invites the non-skater as well because of the opportunity to be able to eat in the space as well, like similar to the cafe that Zhao showed earlier. So then in effect, it's a quite similar approach to the skate shop, but then in this one, it actually allows for a lot more circulation and freedom to be able to play in the area because of the openness in this enclosed area. So as you can see with the combination of ramps and staircase, there it can actually be seen in a very direct manner for just a regular person, right? To be able to sit or just to transition to a different space. But then within like a more enlightened eye and a wooden board with them, like a skateboard, they can actually do a lot of tricks in that single space and provide more activity in the area. Next one. Next slide. So then this one is actually another living room where it is the informal living room. We wanted to create an indoor bowl area where it allows for a lot more freedom of the skaters to be able to kind of use their board and flow throughout the space uninterrupted and everything. And because of the fact that we wanted to make it uninterrupted, we subtly up, applied seating areas or places, sorry, my dog, so places where people who don't skate could sit and watch those people who are skating in the area and don't impose themselves in the space and become nuanced to them. So we wanted to really find balance between the relationship between both. Next slide.
So the last, so this one would be the bedroom, where there's more emphasis on uh, destructing the circle and sort of creating different spaces from each other. And as you'll see later on from some renders, um, and how it differs from having a communal space from this more private space for smaller groups of people. And because from that idea of a bedroom, of having this interiority or this uh, intimacy in an area, we wanted to break down um, the space by uh, this deconstructing or separating different um, like, obstacles, ramps and bowls to different spaces, uh, in a way of like deconstructing the way people um, perform or act in this area. So to show one of some of the renders in that area, specifically the bowl, or maybe the once you enter. Basically, once you enter this space, um, you're greeted with walls and walls and walls, and immediately it deconstructs the space. But then it also gives you, with the windows behind, it gives you an idea of how big this space is. But then, as a bedroom type or as a space for intimacy, we find the maybe with we find the graffiti everywhere, um and having like a specific kind of graffiti as you could see in maybe in the other renders, on how people would probably find themselves here at their most vulnerable. So another render would be um yeah, so basically having like smaller groups of people um practicing, playing around. I um and this was really inspired by having people say that um they would be scared of practicing in around lots of people. And usually as a skater myself, I would rather skate in at my house. And in that regard, it's almost like this gesture of skating in your house, having that privacy um, in your own space, and how you could make this space your own. So yeah. Uh,
So this one's actually just a lot more for the necessity of adding spaces that people could really heal, where it's a clinic because the skate park does entail that people will be putting themselves in harm's way in a sense, though it's really applied in any other place that people would perform skating, like skating tricks or practicing on the skateboard. So then this clinic does provide for treatment area and observation area, and is actually strategically placed for the easy access of the skater, as well as for like emergency use as well. So next. And this is also what we call, like, if we wanted to apply the garage to be like a bus stop. So then having like a place where vehicles could possibly, just like buses to and jeepneys to be able to drop off and pick up people. We wanted it to still be applied in a sense to become a skate spot as well. So as you could see, there's a combination yet again of elevated surfaces like that could be used as a staircase or steps. And with the ramp, it does provide for people to be able to access the space easily, as well as create an opportunity for skaters to imagine the space differently and practice the numerous tricks that they could possibly see in the area. And yeah, and also with our studies from before, by creating invisible barriers, we did create that invisible barrier inside where it is a seating area that is for the non-skater, but then still being able to actually witness the movement around the space as well. So yeah, so it's in a sense, with all these plans, we could kind of show or like synthesize how we did want to show a balance between amongst every type of person within the community, and how it assists in inclusivity as well as the healing of a person. So yeah, this is actually just a section showing the different movements in the space. So yeah, there's the entrance, the more subtle entrance to the bowls and the skate shop. And as you can see there in that little opening, that is the hallway, showing the connection between spaces, where similar to a dream, it's a quite foggy transition, but then instead of a very direct one, there's something a lot more intentional to the movement of the people when going from skate spot to another, as compared to the skate spots above the area, the roofing. It's a lot more free for the person and a lot more open and interacting with the vegetation around it, that we wanted to still apply, similar to the residential building, that assists to a person's healing, as well as creating a very tranquil and accepting place for every person visiting the park. So yeah, this is another section that we did just to show it. Yeah, as you can see, there's that's actually the bedroom typology turned into a more intimate skate spot. And let's just run through the renders to kind of show everything. So in that sense, we did want to show the movement of the people, how it's a lot more free, and how it allows for people to really, yet again, interact with each other fully. So yeah, that's actually it, sir, for our presentation today.
Is it okay? Are you still showing the renderings?
Those are it, sir. That's actually the living room that became a skate spot, a more open skate spot, pool area. So yeah, these are the renders that we created.
Okay, so again, beautiful project, especially this particular special building that you presented. There's no doubt that you guys can design. Like, if I'm going to be a client and actually design, definitely the taste level is very high, and the delivery is actually very impressive, very professional. Both projects actually. But let's go to the content of the project so that I can comment on these things, so that there are things that you can avoid later on. Maybe let me pose a question first. Like, can you elaborate more on how healing is implemented in this project?
Do you want to answer me?
Oh,
Okay, well,
mm,
from our approach into the skate park, healing spaces are applied in a sense of inviting, uh, strategically placing certain spaces that allow for contemplation. For example, the hallway itself. So then, in the sense, as Ja mentioned earlier, how the ego plays a big role in the healing of the self and kind of nurturing it, the flow of the water and the choices made in choosing which path to go through the freedom, the free movement we instilled in the space actually helps with the healing process, as well as the person's interaction with people, with water and vegetation. So that's some, and the harmony between all of them together in
Okay.
a combined space.
For the house project,
For the house project, actually, um, an important thing that we mentioned in the presentation was how the healing of the community is a very important part in the healing of the self. So then with that, in the residential play area, we wanted to really integrate each walk of life in a single building. So instead of having a really specific stakeholder, we wanted to have that ambiguity in the different spaces, different apartment areas, yeah, apartment spaces for that could be inviting like a family or a single person or even like smaller group of individuals, possibly students within that school district nearby. We wanted to have them interact with each other. That promotes inclusivity as well as healing. And with that, with those interactions, we had that pocket garden that had that vegetation and interesting interactions of the people to the landscaping that was instilled inside the building, and also as well as the water where people would have a connection, natural connection to the water that could flow into the building, and um, how water actually plays a really big role, uh, could play a really big role into the healing of the person as well, because it does allow for serenity. Sorry, my tongue.
okay. Anything else before I provide my feedback?
yeah. To add.
Yeah.
Well, basically, um, the the he- the way we interpreted healing spaces in these two programs or these two buildings was totally different from each other, even though we had the same vegetation or like we had gardens or whatever, in a way that we really focused on how in a way skateboarding could affect people and how in turn could heal them in a way, but then um, for the residential itself, it's more on how the community creates a bond to each other and creates almost a circle um, when contrasted by the neighborhood that they're living in. So it's more on like two different circumstances where the skate park involves the people around and the city as a whole almost, or maybe beyond the city. But then the residential itself is almost like um, this solution for the elevated residential part of the city. That's why it's quite they differ from each other quite a lot. So yeah.
Okay, sige. All right. So I completely understand that for this presentation or for this particular project, healing is used poetically. But let me reiterate about messaging. Just how I pointed out the messaging of the rendering of Antea and the Gray when they were showing the plants covering their perspective. It may not be intentional. They may not be conscious of it, but from an outsider's point of view, it seems as if they are hiding the design. But that's not what I'm trying. That's not what I read it, how I read it. But when it comes to this particular project, try to put yourself in the shoes of an outsider who's not invested in this project. They will really look for the how. How is it healing? Because healing is such a very strong word. And you cannot just claim that you're healing spaces or healing people through spaces because you have a water feature. Any house that has a water feature can claim that if that's the case. We are in an academic setting. The exploration process is tedious and rigorous in a way that we want to make it scientific. So if you are going to claim healing, then it needs to be scientific. Do you get it? So how you became scientific with enumerating the anthropometry of the skateboarders or the stakeholders, etc. That is the process that we are going to look for if you are going to zero in to the word healing, because it's such a very strong word. That's what people are going to look for. Because if you're just going to use it as a poetic thing, even in practice, let's say this is going to be a very pragmatic space. You know, a lot of people already use that word already. So for me, it's going to sound like just a marketing or a hashtag. There's no truth to it. In an academic setting, where's the research part or the laboratory part that talks about it? When you mention the water falling down, etc., in my head, I was getting excited already because I thought it was going towards a study of, probably a research showing that, the sound of water, according to this research, etc., heals tissues, etc. For some reason, So if that was the direction of the study, then it would have been super impressive. But no, it wasn't. It's just very subjective with a very beautiful building. I am going to live in that building, but there's a disconnect in the healing part because in this kind of discussion, in this kind of discourse, we look for science. Do you get it? We look for science, and I didn't find it. But you produce, no questions asked. I have no doubt that you guys, the aesthetic level is very, very high. The scientific part is a question to me. Do you follow? Like that. So it's like going to a spa. You see the slogan of a spa. Calm your senses. You're only on that level. Do you get it? It's a healing environment, it's a healing treatment, etc. But there's no science behind it. You just feel relaxed, etc. Then maybe at some point, some of my inflammation is getting better. I mean, it's getting healed, etc. You get it? So for this discussion, it needs to be elevated on a research level. All right, but there's no doubt that the aesthetic, the design, the deliverables are on point, except for the process part, on the research part, on what you're trying to claim. All right? Sige. Maybe there's a ano lang na if you can channel, because what you did was probably it's just a I actually know. When it comes to you guys, I really cannot doubt your dedication to the research. Maybe it just became a habit that, when you talk about process, automatically you think of anthropometry lang, etc. We're talking about the research part, no? I'm sure you thought about that, or maybe because of the amount of work involved, it wasn't really prioritized. But in this discussion, that's what we're looking for. Okay. Do you have any response to that?
Oh, yeah, sir. I think we could have really delved in a lot more into the more scientific approach to how light would affect feeling and the experience of a person. Because I guess we did find studies that did talk about that, but we kind of, yeah,
If you cannot
approached it in
justify
a,
it, don't
yeah,
use it. They get it?
okay.
Otherwise, it will be questioned. That's why the reason why I'm reiterating this now, as as your design mentor, I want you to be conscious of it, so that you won't be labeled as uh, somebody who can produce really good design, because we see a lot of good designs that has a lot of BS in it. Do you get it? So I know you guys are not the type, but if you cannot justify it, you might get labeled for that. Do you get it? So just be truthful with the process, etc. And what they call it? Yeah, like I said, the design, I have no problem. Just try to imagine if there was a scientific basis, and then you're able to connect this to this beautiful architecture, interiors, the exterior. I have no problem with it. They're all connected. Then this is a perfect project. Do you get it? That's all I'm saying. Yeah, if I'm going to be a client, if I'm not an architect, I would hire you guys. But again, academic setting, the level of discussion is very different. Okay? Sige. Anything else?
No, no, sir. Thank
I
you.
think so.
Sige, thank you guys.
Sorry for taking too long.
It's okay, it's okay. But good project, it's a good project.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, just be conscious of the claims later on. It is really for your own good. Yeah, okay?
Okay, thank you,
All right.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So just to start, for our finals presentation, me and Francis will be presenting two typologies. So the first one will be the mosque, which is considered our public typology, and then the second one would be the fabric building. So starting with the mosque, we relocated the mosque closer to the waterfront development, since our earlier concept was about trying to bind communities together, trying to in a way influence them to be more, in a way, united, to be more holistic in a way. So that's why we placed it in the waterfront development, since initially from practice it was already considered in a way a tourist spot or a famous spot. So placing a mosque there would in a way be more visible to the community. And so before we designed or redesigned the mosque, we were going into the different physical elements of the mosque, and how each of these elements are required and how are they practically used. So but aside from that, we went into more deeper context on how different physical elements, or yeah, basically how they would affect like the sensory of how a person would experience the place. So the first one was actually what we noticed amongst plenty of mosques was like a certain pattern, just called either an arabesque or a mashrabiyah. So in Islamic context, it represents more like the growth and unity, like the intertwining of the lines, the continuous connection kind of represents that. While as for the art, in a way, it represents a transition to sacredness. Well, as for water, it's more on purity, rebirth, and for light, it's more on divinity, enlightenment. So basically, our concept, or like what me and Francis were trying to do, is maybe how we can redesign the mosque in a space where these four practical elements can coexist in one space, which is like in this case we picked the like the prayer hall, or like the biggest room in a mosque, wherein everyone goes there to pray to pray to Allah, and basically every important or every sacred practice occurs in that area. So This was a diagram from our previous weeks. So the idea here was, considering we already had the mosque, we were already thinking of other possible typologies that could be located within that mosque. So that would include the halal market and other Muslim residential programs and a learning center. However, for the finals, we weren't able to complete yung other typologies, but nonetheless, these typologies in a way have influenced how we design the mosque now. Because of like the other typologies being a social type of typology, like a market, so it influenced the mosque in a way to become more culturally active, since we were going for a more community-centered type of design. One of our goals was like, since in a way Islamic culture, we know it's, as a religion, it's very sacred, but in a way, how can we um use that sacredness to culturally teach other communities, like make in a way make the culture of Islamic known, and like how in a way people can learn from that. So one of our concepts that we were going for was sight, sound, and space. So sight being from the previous diagram, what if we use these elements to create sorry. We use these elements to create visuality. So the idea we had in mind is using like a Muslim tawag dyan, yung arabesque or the mashrabiyya. What if we can use it as a light to in a way illuminate the inside of a mosque, and after that, including, since the two elements discussed earlier were like light and water, what if we combine these elements with the said mashrabiyya design? And aside from that, since a dome, in practical sense, the dome is in a way like very good when it comes to acoustic. It increases the reverberation of sound. So combining all that, what if we can create like a skylight, which we were talking about for the past weeks. So this was actually an initial iteration of how we redesigned the mosque. So from a typical dome, we designed that, since what if the dome was inside the mosque itself? That way you can reverberate sound more. And for our concept, which is binding communities together, we could have used like the top of the mosque in a way to circulate with the existing topography already. And in practical sense, using all that sensory elements, what if we can create that experience of like when you're praying inside the mosque, or like when you're visiting the mosque itself, you experience all those Islamic cultures that we were saying. So that includes the enlightenment, purity, sustainability, all that. Basically everything that's interpreted by the Quran, which is the Bible of the Islam. So this is basically the site development plan of how we designed the building. So initially, we basically the most important part of like most mosques is the prayer room, because this is the space, the biggest space wherein people pray to, and then they face this wall, which is called Qibla. So this is basically the wall that's pointed to Mecca, which is located in, I think, UAE, sir. Yeah, so it's supposed to be pointed there. But aside from that, we also created in this space a space for the imam. The imam is basically the priest when it comes to Islamic culture. And usually in most Islamic cultures, it's often done for the priest to teach like the younger generation, so that they'd be more knowledgeable when they grow up. So we also allocated that in a way a learning common space for basically for consultations between the priest and the Islamic people. And then from there, this is basically the columnation, and this is the space programming that we allocated. So aside from that mosque, there's also the included minaret. So the purpose of the minaret was basically for for another priest to call the people into prayer. So that priest basically goes up that tower and calls other people into prayer. So we also allocated a space for that. And so usually in Islamic tradition, it's pretty common for men and women or children to pray in different areas. So we allocated like what if for the men they can use these prayer rooms in certain special events, whereas for the women they can use like the upper second floor. Although this is not really, it's not supposed to be strictly followed, but basically we were just based on the research that we found, we had to provide a space for them as well. And this is basically the rooftop or like the intended circulation area that we were discussing or the topography. So the idea was, since in the center of this roof there is like a translucent fountain and it's made of glass. So it's technically, yes, people can see through it, but in a way, as long as it doesn't doesn't disturb the sacred practice of the Islamic people, um in a way it can be culturally taught just by sight. So imagine if, what if people would actually visit this place and they'd learn from the people just by seeing or just by observing. And since based on the requirements of Amos, that they're required to have an ablution area, which is basically an area to wash their hands and their face. What if the fountain itself can act as that ablution area? And that ablution area is exists with the courtyard, which is also part of the existing requirements by the mosque. So what we were actually going for here is, within the mosque, you basically have your own sacred cultural practice by the Islamic people. But when it comes to like the type of ablution part or the part where people actually visit the landscape on top of it, people actually learn from these Islamic people. And in a way, they don't really have to convert to Islam, because that's not what we are really going for. But what we are really going for, since religion has its own share of cultural beliefs and practice, it may somewhat help the community when it comes to basically learning or being united with other people. So these are basically the elevations. So this one is in the front. So basically we separated a staircase for the minaret, which is required for the piece to go up. And then there's the backside. So basically it's an elevated surface. And if I zoom in, we actually provided these types of chairs. And then at the same time, they can also be like plant boxes for the trees. So like the seating area becomes the landscape itself. And then here is basically the fountain, because based from the top view, most fountains usually occur like the process of the filtering or the pumping of the fountain usually occurs in the center. But if we did that, that would basically disrupt the experience that we wanted to occur within the mosque, which is using light and water to represent basically the sustainability, the purity, and the enlightenment of the Muslim culture. So what we did was we inserted the fountain closer here. That way it wouldn't really disturb much of that experience. And this is the left elevation, which we provided another staircase going up. So this is basically the staircase going from the ground floor up to the rooftop, which makes it accessible. And then from the other side, we also provided a ramp, since basically for the PWD people who need accessibility. So these are the sections that we provided. So as you can see, the wall is kind of curved, but for the structural elements, basically for the structural elements, we kind of made it circular. So basically there are two rows of columns. However, for the facade, we kind of like made it in a sense a cantilever type of construction already. And then this is basically the base section that we did. So the reason that we picked this base section is in a way to, since we didn't really have any proper sheets to explain how the fountain would work and how it would contribute to the experience, this base section will actually help explain it. So basically, this is the fountain framing inside. And as the water rises, there'd be basically obviously a pumping system to supply that fountain. And there'd be an inlet and then basically an outlet. And you'd have the pumping system located right beside the fountain itself. And there'd be basically an underground utility room to find a way maintain that system. So that's basically for the mosque. Let me find you. Tapos yung kay Francis.
Oh, okay. Wait. So for the fabric building, sir, the site is located beside Aroceros Forest Park, specifically in Barangay 659A beside the Pasig River. And so we wanted to properly contextualize our plan for the fabric building in a way where we could take advantage of what the site can offer. So it's a bit similar to our concept with the yung mosque, yung special building namin. So next slide, please. So in the process of studying the site, we also wanted to study the demographic of the site. So we would know who you would know who we are working with. And upon realizing that there are lots of kids and there's parang a rather diverse population, we decided to mirror what our special building is aimed at, which is to cater to the community and to be inclusive of everyone, no matter what age, gender, and religion. So next slide. So in order for us to parang achieve what we wanted, we studied how kids interact with spaces, and yung nandito siya sa left, yung we studied how play-based curriculum in China called Anji Play is effective for kids. So parang in this curriculum for learning, they allow the kids to be in a open-ended space where they can learn. And that's what parang makes it effective. And we also parang learned that kids prefer playing in spaces like this, yung mga open-ended space. So basically a space where they have freedom. And speaking of freedom, based on numerous studies, this is also the factor that makes these co-working spaces for adults successful, since if wala sila sa office environment, di nila nafe-feel yung pressure from their yung mga boss nila or mga office mates sila. It's successful in terms of the work output they produce, which is parang nakita din namin sa research, and also the quality of their work. So in summary, parang the idea of optionality in a space, and that is optionality in terms of what you can do in a space. And so with that idea in mind, we thought na it would be best to apply it in a structure where there is little to no option in terms of how you can move to the space. So next slide. So in this slide, sir, we want to refer to the book that Jan Gell wrote. which is called Life Between Buildings. And so in this book, yung basic summary niya is the more interactions that happen in the space, parang mas nalilift niya yung quality ng space. So even though passive yung interactions na makuha more from that space, it is considered high quality compared to parang spaces na walang tao, since feeling mo na dead yung space na yun kasi walang nangyaring interaction between you and other people. So next. And so for the initial iterations for the combination of residential, co-working, and the play space for kids, this is what we came up with. Although we changed it kasi we didn't see it as efficient as what we have now. So next slide, please. And in terms of I mean, as we talk about optionality, we also created these expansion spaces in apartment complexes, since in today, kapag bumalik ka usually ng condo or apartment, you're basically stuck with parang a studio unit that you can really expand. So we decided to add this parang to go with the idea of optionality, pero in terms of parang how you can manipulate the space into your own liking. So next. Next na. So for the idea that we had in combining the co-working space and the play space for kids, this is basically one of the most parang basic idea of combining the two. So meron mga spaces na scattered in the residential area na pwedeng gamitin ng mga kids for whatever purpose they want, and pwede rin gamitin ng adults. So parang there are wall panels na people can remove and use to however they want. So yeah, next. This basically yung sizes ng residential modules namin. So this is the smallest one, which is the 5x10. And next. And this one naman is yung 10x10 na residential module. And pwede ka bumalik, Jericho, ng yung previous slide. And so, yeah, yan. So, in sa floor plan, sir, yung parang open balcony that you see on the left, that is basically the expansion space that we want to leave open for the parang potential residents to personalize their own space. And doon naman sa 10x10, next slide, is basically double the space, since it takes up double of the parang area of the residential unit. So next. This is basically the site development plan that we had for the fabric building. So it's adjacent to the road, and yung lot na pinaglagyan namin is yung malapit nga dun sa Aracelas Forest Park. And we put four of these fabric buildings in one lot, and we resulted into parang occupying 73% of the space. So pasok siya doon sa 70-30 na saleability ratio. So next. And for the ground floor plan naman, since yung naging concern namin last week or yung mga previous weeks is yung the how we can potentially support the structure, which is medyo malabo nung last week. So we redid the whole layout for the columns, and we also redid the whole materiality of the building mismo. So next. And in the ground floor plan, sir, we also wanted to provide commercial stalls to parang mas maximize pa namin yung sellability ratio. And we also added parang an open garden where people can basically do whatever they want sa open space na yun. And number 3 is yung mga co-living spaces na yung idea namin for sa residential typology. And yung 4 is basically access, yung ramp access towards the upper floors. So next. And next na. So in the second floor, sir, dito na makita yung majority ng mga co-living spaces that we did to parang create a more dynamic experience in parang moving to a residential space, since today kasi from how we interpret living in a residential parang condo or apartment, kapag pagkalabas mo ng pinto, it's the only choice you have is parang go ahead dun sa parang go straight ahead dun sa elevator, and walang nangyaring interaction between you and other parang residents. So very one-dimensional siya. And we wanted to redefine that and synthesize it with the yung mga co-working spaces that we did, since yun nga yung ni-reference namin na book ni Angel na we wanted to create a space of high quality where interactions happen the most. So yeah, next. Yeah. So this also parang it follows the second floor plan then. So majority of the co-living spaces are seen at the upper floors para mas malapit din siya dun sa mga residential spaces. So yeah. So similar lang din dun sa fourth floor plan na yung which is yung uppermost floor ng fabric building namin. So next. And this is yung front elevation, sir. And rear elevation, left elevation, and yung right elevation. So in this section, sir, parang dito makita kung paano ka pwedeng umikot through the space. So pwede kong zoom in, Jericho. Yeah, zoom in. Yeah. So yung nakita niyo dito, sir, na sa right, punta ka sa right, Jericho. Yung sa ramp, yan. So basically, ito yung parang main access point of how you can parang move through the floors. So there's also a system of bridges and hallways that you can move through. And we also wanted to provide parang options in how the residents can change their experience in going in and out of their units. So they either have a choice to parang go through these spaces na ginagamit ng mga kids for playing or ginagamit ng mga adults for working. And they also have the choice of going through a hallway na direction na doon sa parang lobby. So next. Ito yung base section, sir. So parang ito na yung how we plan to materialize yung co-working spaces that we did. So yeah, I think that's it. So yung renders na lang, Jericho. Yeah, full screen na lang. So this one, sir, is yung view from the garden sa baba. And parang kita dito na these, yung mga boxes kasi, sir, yan yung mga spaces where kids can play and adults can work. So yeah, yun lang pala. Next. And this one naman is yung ramp. So ito yung parang main access from floor to floor. And next. And ito yung another co-working space that we did na malapit siya sa greenery to provide a parang more peaceful atmosphere for working. Next. And this is yung ano, parang visualization, early visualization ng co-working spaces namin, sir. So you have these wall panels that are removable. So you can parang control how you can move through the space. Ganun. So pwede mong makontrol kung paano mo siya gagamitin. And next. And this is basically a view from the parang facade of the fabric building, showing the Manila City Hall. The next. This yung facade ng fabric building namin, sir. And next. And this is yung view from the topmost floor of the fabric building that we did. And
So basically, this is the experience of the mosque that we were talking about. So this arc in the front, that's basically the qibla or the wall that's pointed towards Mecca. As I was stating earlier, basically we wanted, since the prayer room or like the prayer hall is one of the most important spaces when it came to the mosque, we wanted those four elements stated earlier to be present. So first one is basically the design or like the pattern. So the pattern symbolizes unity. So what we wanted in that mosque is, since that pattern is in a way, how do I say it? It's like the transitional part between the Islamic people worshiping here and the other community people above that roof. So in a way, we wanted them to communicate, and that was one element of the Islamic arabesque. And for the second one is basically the arc. So the reason why, if you notice in the design of the fountain, most of the design is basically similar to an arc, just a different pattern to it. So we wanted to show that that arc, since in Islamic sense, was a transition to sacredness. So basically all these arcs from rooms, from the Qibla walls, from the fountain, all of them basically point towards the prayer hall, which was basically the center of worship. And basically the other two is the light and the water itself to create that experiential effect, to show that Islamic people are in a way pure in their own sense, and um kind of like they have that enlightenment that they were talking about. So this is basically the room from the backside, or basically from the main entrance that we were going for. So basically we provided seats because usually in most mosques men would pray on their knees and they'd have rugs in front, but some women, they tend to sit down, especially when it came to disabilities or age problems already. And in this render is basically wanted to reflect that importance of the art, which is the transition to sacredness. So basically we wanted to, in a way, show that pattern of consistency, to show that to show like the consistency of Islamic people when it came to worshiping, basically when it came to worshiping Allah. So this is the outside of the mosque, around the minaret. So basically this part above, this is basically the plane that is connected to the topography of basically the waterfront development, or which is connected to the other ground level. And at the bottom, this is where people tend to circulate. So this is basically the one beside the Pasig River now. And this is the minaret. Yeah. So the reason why the minaret also has like sides or slices, it always like basically just for sunlight and for air to come in, rather than relying too much on electricity. You know? And this is basically another render of the experience itself. And this is the top view. Basically, this is the part where it's connected already to the topography. So this is where people start to like the Islamic culture and the other communities start to in a way communicate with each other, since it's a common social area. But in a way, since the fountain also acts like an ablution area for the Islamic people, um, that simple practice can already teach or basically teach or make other communities learn what's basically important on the beliefs of the Islam culture. So I think that's the last slide. So,
Okay, done.
yes, sir.
I have a question regarding the mosque. So what do you think is the new idea behind the mosque?
Um, for me, sir, I believe it's two things. Which first is the dome, and the second one is the fountain. So starting with the dome, usually in most mosques, you'd see the dome above because that they consider that dome like the heaven itself. But in this sense, like in usually most modern mosques, they don't have a dome anymore. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's required in a way, or maybe it's something regarding their beliefs. But in this sense, we wanted that dome to envelop light itself, which is basically from the fountain. And since the fountain is the second part, which is basically the new idea, is the fountain. Um, Not only does it act as an Islamic element, like an important Islamic element, but since it also practically cools the area, it becomes like a special social place, both for the people and the Islamic. It becomes important for the Islamic people because of their practice, but for the other communities, it becomes important. Not only is it because a similar spot in the waterfront development, but because it in a way it acts like a park, and in a way it could attract a lot of people because of basically the fountain, the grass, and the vistas from above here. So because of in a way, since it attracts a lot of people, it can communicate with the Islamic people who in a way practice their culture in that area.
Okay, anything to add?
I don't think so, sir.
Okay. Well, the reason I ask is because when I'm looking at the fabric building, you explored the idea of common areas, common spaces, and how it can generate a new architecture. You're basically introducing that idea to a building typology. Whereas this one, it's just basically a rearrangement of the different elements of a mosque. I'm not saying it's not uh, I'm not saying it's ugly. It's actually very beautiful. You know, I would love to have it built. But when it comes to the idea, if Bea's and Jao's project has a disconnect with the concept, this one didn't have any. It's like I'm a client and I ask you to design me a beautiful mosque. They get it? And then you provided me just that. But there's no new idea. There's a new idea in terms of rearrangement or probably experience, but there's really no innovation involved in terms of introducing an idea as compared to the fabric building. That's why I had to ask, what is the new idea? What is the idea that changed the mosque? Do you get it?
I think in a way, sir, since yung fabric building, like as Francis said, the concept was binding people together. So that's basically the different age groups that was discussed a while ago.
Yeah.
But for this one, the one that I think the one that the one that we had in mind is, since most mosques are sacred, how can in a way can we link how can in a way can we link a typical mosque, since most mosques are isolated, like yung golden mosque, they're usually isolated just like gate. How in a way can we connect that with the community, with the existing space or the existing social space that's already present?
Well, before you can
what,
say that, you need to show me, you need to show case studies and evidence that that is the case. Because if you claim that it is isolated, I've seen mosques that are open. Sorry. TikTok. Anyway, you need to show evidence that there are mosques that are isolated, like showcase studies that it is actually a problem. Then probably you're solving an existing issue about mosque. Do you get it? You need to provide evidence in the research part. All right, but that is not to say that the mosque, like I said, if I'm a client just looking for a beautiful mosque, you'll be my first pick after seeing your design. I also love the design of the fabric building, how it turned out, how poetic it is, how I wish that did you have a rendering showing the entire city, that the master plan that you had somehow?
Not yet, sir.
Unfortunately, sir, hindi kinaya nung render.
Probably
Kanina.
sa walkthrough, sir.
So, plan namin siya ipakita dun sa walkthrough, sir.
That's important kasi gumawa kayo ng master plan, kayong author ng master plan. It will be nice to see how I can imagine that if that will be the fabric building and majority of these buildings, I'm not very particularly interested. Well, it looks good, but this one is very nice. This one with the smaller grids. You have another shot showing a guy going through the ramp, if I'm not mistaken. That one is very nice. This one is very nice. The previous image shows, that one is really, really nice as compared to the other one. Can we go to the one that shows? Yeah, that one. It looks like a generic. No, not this one. The other one. That one. It looks like an industrial building. If I'm going to buy a house, I'm not sure. I'm trying to put myself. If I'm a modernist, then probably I might get the house with this exterior. But if I'm an ordinary Filipino, will I buy a house from this? As compared, can we go to the interiors? With these spaces, which are very intimate, very human in scale, more personal, how would you pick? Not to mention that our city is all about, the master plan was supposed to be about intimate cities. You get it?
Yes, sir.
So when you look at I'm not saying that this is a bad project. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I'm sure that in terms of development, since you guys have been doing this for quite some time, you are way advanced than others. But at least in this part, it's something that you probably missed out on. Can you go to the exterior part? John Gell disappeared in this. Yeah. So,
yes,
but
sir.
The interior vignettes, John Gell is there.
You
get it? So try to
yes,
imagine if you bring that out. I would love to be in that space. I would love to buy a condo unit in that building. This one looks like an industrial building, an office, or even like a corporate headquarters in Silicon Valley. Yeah, that's not
yes,
I'm not ugly, but that's how it appears, because it's,
yes,
it's in terms of scale, it's big. It's kind of it looks like a humongous building. Okay, so but the interior spaces are superb. I love it actually.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Sir, so siguro i-translate na lang namin yung...
Try nyo. Kasi yun talaga yung...
Okay, sir.
That's the winnable interior space. Like when I was looking at it, I was telling myself, I'm going to live in this space. I'm going to live in this space, especially with the interiors. This place, that vignette, that space, it would be nice to live in that space. All right?
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, bye. Who's next?
Hi, sir.
Okay. Game.
Diba? Anong letter ka?
Hello?
Anong letter ka, Lance? Nalimutan.
M.
O basta kahit sino na. O unless si
Gusto mo bang
Kevin
mauna?
somewhere.
Kung pwede.
Yeah, but I think
Kasi may anxiety pa kasi. Kasi okay lang naman. Julian, okay lang?
kung kaya pa.
Yeah, okay lang.
Sige,
Sige.
game.
O sige, after mo na lang.
Andiyan
ba
ba
si
si Kevin?
Where's Kev?
Okay.
Hold up. I'll check Kev. Kasi... Give me a sec.
Basta start your record. It's being recorded naman. Okay, game.
Okay. Hello, sir. So this is our update from last term with regards to our site. To briefly explain the idea behind this project is that
Tracy,
we want, yeah.
are you screen sharing now?
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Yeah.
I forgot I stopped. Okay. So the idea behind this project is that it's a this is a tropical city. How can we make Manila a more tropical city by introducing a lot of these green areas, especially like bamboo? How can we utilize these local resources into our master plan? So when we looked at a model that we wanted to follow, we kind of looked back and looking forward, but not too forward wherein we focus on globalizing and we forget local context. We always go back looking at the local archetypes that defines what is quite Filipino and tropical in nature. So definitely we've
Could
explored.
you go back?
Sure, go.
Yeah. So, like Tracy said, we look back, and that for the main reason that we want to continue the narrative of the tropical city, even in the purpose of the typologies and how they are designed, even at this, even in the level of what kind of material we're going to use and how it's going to be used. Yeah. And
Yeah. So we kind of look at the study of our culture of materials construction, and of course, somewhat integrating the some aspects of the explorative process to create a new typology. So the location of the site we are at, it started with the bamboo district, and then somewhere nearby the university district and the civic center. That's where we started populating some of our fabric buildings. So the first thing we focused on was actually the bamboo district, and we had this study on how bamboo matures. They need a lot of water. They need to be watered around 2 to 3 times a week during the dry season, and 1 times at least in the wet season until they mature. Because once they reach maturity, they do not need to be watered as much since their roots are more established in the area. But usually by that time, this is being used for big scale construction, which can be used to the fabric of the city.
yeah. So, if we go back, sorry.
No worries.
So, we're studying bamboo because, as per Sir Jim's critique last term, it was a big question of how we were gonna sustain it, and one direction was to reposition the park, was to reposition the forest area where bamboos are naturally located by the river. But me and Tracy decided to keep it where it is and maybe see it as a problem that we could tackle with design.
So originally, the location of our lot, this is the entire bamboo area dedicated for planting and growing and research of this. And we tried calculating if it's suffice enough to use rainwater collection as means. And clearly, as we calculated based on the general average rainfall and the amount of volume it's needed, it's a very huge discrepancy. So Kevin and I was wondering, like, how can we still try to approach this problem? Because definitely, how will the tropical city thrive if the bamboo forest itself can't have its own water supply? Like, it's possible to use Manila, but it's not economical to the cost, definitely. It's not something that is, I'm not sure if the government will be able to sustain that for a while.
And when the way we want to provide for the bamboo, since the bamboo provides for the people, we wanted the source of the water to come from the site itself, the city itself, not like Tracy said, Maynila na galing sa mga dam pa. If we already have a water source here, we just have to work it out.
Yeah. So actually, there's a lot of studies on how we could naturally remediate the river. Of course, what we have, fortunately, our design has this small estero, which can kind of be a mini project, somewhat like a small vision of what Pasig River can be. So it kind of symbolizes somewhat hope in a symbolical way, but also potential to provide water to the greater part of the bamboo forest. So we focused on the smaller part, the neck that connects towards the man-made esteros. We designed, and we found a lot of challenges that we have to tackle because there are two main highways. Since we promoted a walkable city, these are the only two main highways. One that is people could cross, which can be dangerous because it is a main highway, and the other one that's underground. So it becomes a little bit more difficult and expensive to service, assuming we have pipes that goes through to make the water accessible to the other side and the connecting part of the bamboo forest.
Yeah. So if I can add lang rin.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So when me and Tracy last term when we designed the city, we initially put that man-made estero and the central feature as a destination, as an experience to lead you from the riverside to the heritage areas. And that was the direction we wanted to continue. But now, considering these large lands can be a location for a special typology or a landmark typology. And then it tied everything together when the problem was utility based. So in a way, we're continuing something, and we're continuing an idea that was brought up last term.
Mm-hmm. So another thing that we were looking at, since we're using a water source, it's also something we have to figure out, like the safety of the people. Of course, Ermita being located close to the heart of Manila and close to Pasig, it has a medium to high hazard depending on the area. So definitely, and if you could see it, it's located on the area where our site is. So how can we kind of mitigate that problem? So before that, we actually studied first mostly on the bamboo, on how can this benefit the people, like the psychological and physiological effect in terms of the spatial experience. So as you can see, right, the best one that we were looking to incorporate is the highest spatial preference, which is the forest external space.
Yeah. So what's good about this research was because bamboo forests are usually done in the mountainous regions or the rural areas. And if we were to envision an urban bamboo forest, syempre, it's something that we have to strategically design. And this research helped us in organizing and figuring out how to configure the special typology you'll see later. So
These were the early iterations wherein we took consideration with the, let's say, the flood risk, other explorations on how
yeah,
can we elevate and make it more accessible to
yeah,
the bamboo forest area by playing with elevations and somewhat initially to incorporate therapy or like small obstacle courses that is at least walkable to the elderly.
yeah. If you can go back.
Sure.
So um um elevating these spaces and the structure itself was the first thing we did because um I'm not sure if Tracy mentioned it a while ago, but the height of the bamboo is can go to about
20.
15 to 20 meters, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we wanted to anchor on that height, um considering what Tracy was mentioning a while ago about circulation and flood consideration. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So as you can see, we actually already applied the idea of using the forest external space towards so that the people will feel more relaxed when they go through the area, because if we scattered it in ways or like make the person feel they're engulfed with this with the bamboo, although it's really good to have bamboo around, it could give stress rather than benefiting them physiologically and psychologically. And
Yeah. So
another question related to this was, well, since we were talking about elevating spaces, this is one of the other examples that we want to prevent. Kevin, do you know more about this one?
yeah, can we go back lang a
Yeah,
bit?
sure.
Just one
This one?
slide. So yeah, what Tracy was saying here was already like us applying the physiological and psychological research, pero independent pa to of the site. And one of Sir Jim's critiques back then in the first few weeks was how this contradicts how organic the master plan was. And so we took you'll see later that we took steps forward throughout the term. Then can you move next slide? So yung issue dito was this struck us because one of its elevation, and two because we wanted to make a city last term that's very walkable. But with the streets, it's not really it's difficult to connect those two sides across the streets. And this is one controversial example of putting an overpass, just a simple overpass that just uses stairs. And what struck us here was how it's not for everyone, it's just for able-bodied people. And for to make a walkable city, and typologies for it, you have to, we believe you have to consider everyone, the PWD, the non-able-bodied people aside from the able-bodied people. So yeah, this was in sa may EDSA to. Yeah. So some up north. Yeah.
Yeah. And to justify again why we pick, considering the elderly or those who are getting older, is that by projecting by 2025, we are close to being an elderly population. So that means there will be definitely a change, the gradual change over the years, that slowly will get to an older population. And definitely we have to consider these people for the longevity of the project. Who's going to use it? Is it going to be all able-bodied people who could walk stairs? But how about the people who needs to cross the other side? Because definitely the highway that we designed, it cuts through the entire space. How can it be safe for them to cross? And so that kind of summarizes this image summarizes our question, like how can we kind of integrate this idea with the tropical city and the consideration of bamboo and these other factors.
Because
Elderly.
Because given that we want to make a bamboo park for our landmark slash special typology, that can be that is a utility typology. At the same time, we don't just want to make a simple forest like what we did in the master plan. And then these are the problems that rose up. So we took note of the different anthropometrics that might help us. These are elderly people. Then next, ito naman yung mga children, in the case that there are. And then next.
This is actually the site general rendering. So how you could see where the position of the major highways, the LRT, and actually the estero, as well as why it connects it to the bamboo area. So zooming in, we can see how it's somewhat like a little bit different to how we approach the organic form, but nonetheless it's kind of similar to what do you call this, nodes that you see in, let's say, plants also, in some ways, because the way we approached it is modular, in a modular sense, that it's quite algorithmic in its own way, which nature kind of mimics, especially in a what do you call this, microscopic level.
Yeah. And yeah, so this is one render. You can actually show it, naman. It's fine.
Yeah.
So this is one render showing how the typology is connected to the river and how it anchors on that. And yeah, that's a sneak peek first. And next, so looking back to the first few weeks, these are precedent studies from program and the geometry. And just to review the octagon, we never really let go of it because of how much additional square meter you can get for the same perimeter. And it's panoramic views and solar shading and less heat gain. So structurally, it's also more stable than it's more stable than a square, and more functional than a circle. Though the issue in this one, the issue in this geometry was how it's kind of stiff if you just use the simple geometry. So we tried exploring if we could break it down or morph it. It was taken from studying these native Filipino tropical houses. Yeah. So next.
So based on that, this was one of our earlier iterations on literally taking the octagonal shape of the program and then forming it in ways to program the fabric building.
Yeah,
It led from the fabric, and we also apply it to the special typology.
Yeah. So taking from that, we sort of had the idea, what if we could break them down into equal parts or similar parts? And these were the iterations that we made from a simple surface to a simple cone, and then we started integrating the different levels of the filtration process into it. There is a larger typology because, as we showed a while ago in the initial elevated walkways, we wanted to bring it further. Like, what if the elevation wasn't just there just to keep people up, but what if there's actually a process in that structure? And then given sorry, can you go back?
Sure.
So that would be the full octagonal shape that would have a space for people in it and the space for the rainwater harvesting. And you'd have smaller units that you could use for structure for rainwater collection throughout the bamboo forest, and at the same time hold the pathways and shade them for the people. So this is how these are just samples of how they could build up that we tried. And then basically it's breaking them down into 3 parts. And then
This
So
is
this, yeah,
yeah,
go
this is the section of how it works conceptually. We explored on how, of course, we applied what like how much like the width, the span. After a while we already addressed how we would go by with the spans, which we will show a little later
yeah,
on. And generally the process of both using the rainwater as well as the estero water as part of to water the greater part of the bamboo forest.
yeah. Just maybe I could quickly run through the process.
Sure. This one?
So yeah,
Okay.
so this is based on the typical rainwater collection process, and we just congested it into a structure. So you have the rainwater catchment with angles so that they would lead to somewhat like gutters, and then an initial storage. So that the elevation at number 3 is where the people can actually rest from walking, given that it's a big typology and it's a park. So that could be a that space is going to be used for the people, and below it um is where the pipes are going to lead to the filtration. And then ideally on the first floor kasi pwede visitors, pero there's going to be harvesting of the bamboo that's going to be done. So but we didn't want to make it seem like a factory type. Like we were thinking, what if the water could be sourced like a water feature, and it would part of the process would be how it would fall down like a waterfall fountain, I guess, into number 5. It would be like a spectacle for them. Then, yeah. Next. So yeah, this is a render of the ground floor of that larger unit with the bamboo structural.
Yeah. So it's kind of a combined structural bracing that we used. Of course, bamboo has a lot of great properties, like its tensile strength. But since it has quite a large span, we also added more reinforcement to make
Yeah.
sure that it's stable enough to be used for this large span. And you could see that the reason why we chose to expose the pipes is mostly because of accessibility. This structure makes it easier. So those instances when Manila kind of shuts down the road and has to fix the pipes instead of congesting a major highway. One way that's why we believe this structure can help somewhat mitigate that problem is by allowing that these pipes to be exposed so that there's a system, it's easier to maintain.
Yeah. So so here's a detailed exploded actinometric of the smaller units, the medium and small units. So there's 3 layers to it. In the innermost part, you have the polycarbonate sheeting where the rain will surface, and it will lead into the pipes, that will lead it to the filtration areas. And then there is a steel structural framing to support that, and over that is a treated bamboo support for it. Yeah. So this is the view from entering of if you're walking along the man-made estero. So
And given that the height, it's quite tall. Yes, it's quite tall. But also considering the context of the area, bamboo grows like in a year already at its full height, more or less a year. So that's around 15 to 20 feet. It's just over time, by the third or fourth year maturity, its clumps in the center gets larger. So regardless, when we tested the sun analysis on this, the area will be generally shaded, so it's
Yeah.
quite safe to to walk across.
Yeah, and the height of the structure still pays respect to the city hall, which you'll see later, to
Yes.
maintain that rule we set last term.
Okay. So if you could see, this is kind of like a focus plans of how it works. The purple ones are the base of the larger units, and if you see the small structural columns, those are the smaller units that helps in the connections based on our analysis, based on the accessibility of the people and of course the water, so that it's people could come either from the upper and lower side and still be able to cross this bridge safely.
Yeah. So this is another view entering the. Can you go back?
Right here.
Yeah. So there's another view entering here, but yeah, it's more shown here how there are two structures that are connected to the water feature, where the ester from the water will be pulled up to be transported. And then next, it is another view of the larger unit with the ramps. Next.
And then, well, same thing as the structural plan suggests, and another vista that shows the main part of the estero. So you can see the pipes that goes through down. So the orange actually indicates these are quite large in size compared to the rest of the pipes, since rainwater, it doesn't come by every day. Definitely estero water, this is the most important part for watering our bamboo forest. So it
Yeah.
needs a heavy duty design as well.
Yeah.
So this is the pipe plan. So the colors that we followed with this is the lighter blue shade. As you can see, these are the forgive me, it was switched around. The light blue is the rainwater, and then the orange is the estero pipe, so it's quite big. And then the output after it goes through like the different
The
areas,
filtration units, yeah.
yeah, it will go to the other side of the greater bamboo forest area to water that large part.
Yeah.
So
So this is just an exploded axiometric, di naman exploded, but isometric view of it. Yeah. So another view for that, and walking up. So here, so we wanted to show rin how the great views from this park, because at the end of the day, it's also a park, and we still want to pay that homage to the heritage around it, and this render also shows how the pipe follows the ramps going up to address the issue that we were talking about a while ago regarding transporting the water. So yun, above the pipes naman, kasi there are the platforms na for that are the second floor platforms for the elevated areas. And then we wanted to show in this render how it goes over the road and it's still passable by the cars underneath. In this, yeah. So this is a render of that space in between the rainwater collection unit. So there are ramps on the sides, and given how tall and dense the bamboos are, we wanted to provide viewpoints to the heritage areas to return to the master plan. And then we made these ramps to frame the different heritage buildings. So this is one of the city hall.
And that's the aerial view. So if you go over it, you can see it's actually very, despite being algorithmic or quite, it was derived by a simple shape, we were able to explore it in a sense that it could be more economical in terms of the the design and production, which because one of our initial ideas is like, okay, what happens if we the issue with organic design of buildings, right? It could be very costly because of its very dynamic shape. But clearly with this kind of exploration, we were able to find another way in order to address that
Yeah,
that
so
challenge.
yeah, it's a repetition of units, and it's configured in a way that it follows the paths of the pedestrians going to the different heritage areas, even across the green strip. Next, that's another view. Next, yeah. So this is our special typology and utility typology.
Okay, so this one is starting again from the very early weeks. It was just kind of looking at the local materials, and then mostly, yes, what we focused on is bamboo. And like since we have abundance with it, you'll be able to replenish it every 4 years, and it's very close. Like definitely this becomes a commodity of the city, and it will change the identity. And it's a big what if we use this as to an advantage, because usually there's a stigma, especially if you're in the province. Parang when you see a bamboo house like from a local, parang it's a poor man's lumber, or even though it's not lumber, it's a grass. Like what happens if we actually make it in a way that is we approach it a little bit pragmatically. So this project, because definitely we cannot make the entire city just bamboo, because right now we have appliances compared to back then. Our ancestors didn't have these problems of fires with when it comes to electrical
Yeah.
sort of thing. So
So
we always go back, as you can see, we always go back to the DNA and the question of the foundation where we started. So yeah, go Kev, if you want to
so
add it.
what do you call this? So can you go back now?
Sure.
Yeah, this was, like Tracy said, the plant study for starting the fabric building. And like Tracy mentioned, what our fabric building is probably a proposal or an alternative design on how bamboo can be present in the city, and yeah, make its fabric basically. Next.
I'm just gonna go through. Okay, so in a way, we approached it looking at the local context. Although these aren't like the best kind of examples, but these are dominant things that we always see. We could see like these typologies that definitely, although it's some form of shop houses that people build quite quickly, and you see this around Manila. And then so we took that as one of our major case studies. And of course, we looked at the context of the site, the location of it, and like the street that we picked is quite narrow because we talked about intimate cities at that time. So given this data, we actually, as shown previously with the hexagonal shape, we first explored those two precedents and then created this hexagonal exploration of a building.
Yeah.
Although I guess the issues here is like the 80% saleability, and then the
Yeah.
question of materials, like is this safe for the people. So in a way, this is the very raw bones of it, as you can say. And then the next iteration was something that we explored, like how is it possible to make something organic and from a linear form into something that can move. And then this actually starts our actual exploration of how we came to the our fabric building. So it started with, again, the hexagonal shape. And then instead of just relying on the hexagonal shape, we divided into two and then played with the positioning and the like how does it interact per level. So in a sense that it's not anymore just like a hexagonal shape straight up, but it's derived from it. And then we started using, of course, the structural beams and columns, and
Yeah.
well, like how is it going to be built, and then the roofing that we want to materialize, especially in the city, because one of the things that makes an identity is like the roofing system. So that's
Yeah.
what we do. What happens if
And
we roofing?
so as you can see it grow, as you can see it developing, we we wanted to tackle on a very uh small or a small design because of the data that we showed last term regarding the density of the population in the area. So we wanted to see how we could make mixed use residential as a fabric, um, not a big building, but something that can accommodate the efficiency ratio and address that problem ideally.
Yeah. So it's actually a 5 by 12 meter structure. So and on the location, both sides have accessibility to the street. And this is kind of like playing with the variations based on like 2 iterations, and then we just played with the levels and changed the bamboo what do you call this, brisole, which we actually based also on our other study in another class in our house
Our house, yeah.
with Sina Janelle and others. So this is the elevation. As you can see, it creates a dynamic shape. And tackling back again with the idea of sari-sari store, caninderias, or yung mga small businesses, they always have these signages, and definitely we have to give that space that they're able to use it. And also it doubles as more of like an additional covering to that brisole for shading. You can see the details, like these are like the 2 variants that we were able to explore.
Yeah.
We made sure that it's angled in a sense that water cannot penetrate, but still uses bamboo. So you're able to change these parts. The reason why it's cut this way, because these are parts of bamboo like people they would throw away. And then what happens if we kind of put it together in a system para hindi sayang yung material itself to be used.
And
then, yeah.
so when we were designing this, if you guys remember back in our video, we designed the walkways to be like wind tunnels, right? And the buildings to be shading the walkways. So we wanted to look at these details as parang ganun rin. Kaya brisole yung pinili namin because it's a very because of the tropical climate. We wanted the winds to penetrate the structures, but we didn't want the rain and harsh sunlight to do the same.
And then this is actually a section elevation of one of the variants.
Yeah.
So then the exterior render, so you can see how dynamic it could actually be for the for experience it on ground level. Definitely,
So,
we will still add more character to it, like signages. So yeah.
So what we wanted to reflect here then, coming from the special typology and the bamboo forest, was yun nga, the application of bamboo in the fabric building and how it could create the identity of the tropical city, aside from the roof form.
So if you're gonna look here, these are examples of what if one side is not really maybe a changge or a small boutique clothing, so small businesses, and the other side is yung parang a very small caninderia or an alfresco dining. So there's kind of like an exploration of that. And if you're gonna look at our variants in the ground floor, there's one that's fixed, and then there's one that moves, because was also based on one of Kevin's research. I'm not sure which typology, but there was a Filipino typology that plays with movable
Yeah,
dividers.
yung Kalinga house or
Yeah,
Tausog house,
yeah,
they
that
have given it's a native housing, they're very tropical,
yeah.
and they had these detachable or washable detachable walls and washable floor panels to so that they could manipulate them depending on san magaling yung hangin or
Yes.
san may tulo. Ganun.
And then a simple intervention that we also designed, as mentioned before, it's also rooted towards the problem of flooding. So we raised it by around 0.6 meters, which is one of the medium risk, around the medium risk level. So
Yeah.
the interior won't be flooded as well. So it will help these, um, the people who's living here to make sure that most of their possessions don't get destroyed by the floods.
Yeah.
And then these are the renders that shows the interior space. And then if you move, of course, if you move towards the second floor, one of the things we addressed, I also talked to Jericho, like since he lives in Binondo, what were the advantages and disadvantages in living in like a mixed use commercial house. Definitely one of the things he wished that there was is nature. So this is kind of exploring of how we can make pocket spaces of the areas where the brise soleil is. It will allow some different plants. It could be like small plants like succulents na kaya doesn't need direct harsh sunlight. So there are definitely plants for that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
addressing that presence of nature without affecting the efficiency ratio was something we wanted to continue since last term we had garden roofing,
Mhm.
and then we wanted to explore like how can we have those in between spaces.
Yeah. So you could see the way that you could when you explore this place is mostly by variation of heights. Some of it is a little bit inspired by other countries like in Japan, wherein they recess the chair sitting. So this is like a fixed table and then could fit around 4 people. I have another, if you look back in the right variation, the right side, you could fit probably around 6. So it becomes a transformative space. So if it's not being used, it becomes a place where people could walk, and
Yeah.
there's no problem in terms of accessibility.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So this is a render showing the sunken dining area and the counter window. This is the stairs going to the third floor, I believe. It's also open air. That this was what we were saying a while ago. Now we wanted the yung pagka-tropical to be also felt within the structure,
Yeah,
not just
we
outside.
also allowed the beams to be exposed because it's also being used as a structural support for our
Yeah.
BCA design. And the third level, so we still wanted to keep on that idea that the verticality is what separates it. And if there's children, like how can they be seen, by the parents kasi sa ibang floor ka, hindi sa you're not in the same level. So we
Yeah.
made a design wherein what happens if this is not open, okay, this is a glass.
Yeah,
Looks
it's
like
glass.
there's no glass. What happens like if the children just does their work and then says, parents like saying kain ka na, baba ka lang.
Yeah. And it could
Um,
be the other way around too. If
Yes.
the parents want to use it for working while their children are eating in the lower area.
So it becomes a space that is dynamic. And then the fourth floor is more of the living room and master bedroom. So these are different configurations. So another way you could use this is probably instead of a living room, since you could use the other 2 levels, is by converting it to storage for the shop houses. And
Yeah.
that's generally the areas they use. And then the roof plan, the reason why it's divided into 2 halves instead of one singular hip roof is so that there's still sunlight that gets to go inside, because the narrow streets makes it hard for sunlight to enter. So at some extent, we wanted sunlight to still penetrate to save on the cost of
Um,
lighting, the electrical bills.
yeah,
So
it
as
works somewhat
tropical
like a
as it,
terracery, right?
yeah. And then these are the bamboo connector details, how we could somewhat
Yeah.
create these dynamic structures using what we have with that entire narrative that we stayed on to be applied here. Ayun. So you can see the dynamic spaces, and that's it. So yeah, that's it, sir.
Yeah. So there's the view from the City Hall vista
Mhm.
looking inwards to the populated strip.
The rendering, can you show the renderings again?
Which one, sir?
All the renderings that you have.
Sige lang.
Okay. So the roofing, where did it come from? The profile of the roofing, as you were saying that it.
Okay. Where is a good design? Here. So the profile of the roofing, kasi in terms of bamboo, I remember there's a certain pitch that we have to follow.
Yeah.
It's a little bit steeper than the usual. So with a small area, definitely the only way is to either raise it very high, but then that's a lot of wasted space, or we curve it. And then that's the iteration where we ended up. And then we wanted skylights so that at a certain extent, meron naman natural light that comes in.
Because I can't help but associate it with a lot of Oriental buildings.
Yes, sir.
Is that an intentional thing?
Yeah, actually, sir, our intention, we also noticed that with regards when we were exploring, but what we focused on is definitely just the context of the
Okay.
the tropical identity. So I guess the reason why it kind of ended up by that sense, it's something that we know it kind of works, and it's something that this is possible. Like if we could show it to people that this is actually a possible thing, because if you have firewalls, if you could see there's like an extension of the firewall, like around I put 1 meter, it could go a bit higher, so that to make sure that the bamboo roofs doesn't get caught fire, or if one gets caught fire, the other residential naman, they're relatively safe because of the 200-meter firewall. So we kind of really tackled in a manner that if we want to make this vision close to reality, and given the time constraint, it seems quite hard to explore on a purely what do you call this, creative typology aspect. So we kind of follow the 80% scalability mostly, sir.
Okay, can we go to the funnel type of building? So what does it do again? Like, are these just architectural follies? I just want to.
Sir, so yung there are 3 sizes. There's the small and the medium and the large unit. All of them collect as much rainwater as they can get for the bamboo forest pa rin.
What makes
And
it
then-
different from if it does not exist? Just let the let the rainwater nourish.
Oh,
Yeah, like
sir, it's not just the rainwater. We were talking about the problems that we looked at, the accessibility of the site, which is here, sir. So because the design of our site, if you can see my cursor on the right side, this is a major highway, because everything we have here is a walkable city, and this is also an underground highway and the LRT. So the question is like, how can we bring water to go to the other side without disrupting? Let's say if diba Manila, if you put the pipes just underneath the the road, definitely you're gonna disrupt this one big artery that is the only artery in our walkable city. So in a way, the elevation is the reason why it's really tall. We wanted to elevate it so that even though that there are cars passing through, um, the servicing of it won't affect the the movement, the arteries of the city, of which cars and public transport passes through.
The better question I should have posted was, like, how can he justify that it can collect more rainwater versus not having it at all?
Sir, the thing with that, that we thought of that rin. Pero kasi diba, there's also a dry season. And in the dry season, there's not much rain. So the idea of the rainwater units was that it could collect pag tag-ulan. And then, nafi-filter out, mas malinis rin yung tubig na nabibigay sa bamboo. Yeah, and then now we have water storage at the dry seasons na rin, instead of just letting them fall on the bamboos themselves.
That is just a secondary reason. Like, I think it can be justified. We just lack the necessary drawings with computations to substantiate that claim.
All right, sir.
Okay, sir. Noted.
So, on the positive note, I have no negative comment on the presentation, except that it goes for everyone. It's just that I'm not interrupting everyone when they're presenting. But please be reminded that under normal circumstances, if we say it's 20 minutes, you will be cut at 20 minutes. So you really need to direct and curate your presentation within the given time limit. Okay.
Oh, yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, because it's already 8:11, and we're not. I don't know if we're halfway already. So it's really not fair for the last people who will present. Okay. Sige.
Yes, sir.
Be conscious of that. Okay. Sige. Thank you.
Sure, sir.
What's next?
Thank you, sir.
But in terms of design, Tracy and Kevin,
Yes, sir.
can we share it? Can you share it again?
I'm sorry.
Sir, which one?
The funnel. A negative one is that it echoes your project in design 4.
Good. Okay, JC.
But I love that it's a dual tone. You have a different personality when it's aerial view. In a way, it does feel very organic, especially when you have that aerial view. Can you show it again?
It was,
Like, you have a
sir,
different experience.
yeah, sige lang.
You have a different experience at the ground level with all those bamboo.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the moment you fly your drone, or probably you're on a rooftop, it looks like as if it's on top of a
Yeah.
what do you call it? It's like a giant. I forgot the name of the flower, the one that catches insects.
Rough flesh ba yan?
Venus flytrap. And
Yeah, something like that.
sir, if I
anyway.
can, if I can, this view is from the rooftop of the Bamboo Innovation, the research center talaga.
Yeah, it
that
will
we
be a
do.
nice surprise, because, well, I look up to Jürgen Mayer when I saw Metro Parasol. What you see from below, it's the same thing on top, but here it's a pleasant surprise. It's still consistent in a way. Different experience below, and then all of a sudden you have this surprise, which is functional, because you really need to have a very smooth surface, etc. This is how you make design. This is how you make functional elements elegant and design. Do you get it?
Thank you, sir.
Carlos and Aaron, this is what I was saying. Especially, you are in the early stage of that of that wheel thing. You know, the next level is how you design in such a way that you are on this level of aesthetic that doesn't feel as if it's just a machine. Do you get it? So yeah, and then the fabric building was also designed in a very mature way. I love the details and the tectonics of these details and how functional they are, how functional they can be. Yeah, sige. Yun na muna. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
How do I stop? Other.
Game.